Welcome, everybody, to the November 12th, 2024 Bellevue City Council meeting. We have Councilmember Janice Son remotely attending from a conference that she's at, and Councilmember Lee is going to try to be remote. I'm not sure if he's going to be successful with that. But before we begin, I just want to say a few words about attending and participating in council meetings. We ask that individuals do not disrupt our meeting. This includes talking out of turn or without permission, interrupting or making sounds when someone else is talking, or approaching council members or city employees who are staffing the meeting. If a person does disrupt the meeting, I will give a warning and end the person's remaining comment time, or ask the person to leave the meeting room for the rest of the meeting. My hope and personal request is that people will express themselves without name calling, taunting, or disparaging others, and I know we can do it. And with that, we'll start the meeting. So, City Clerk, could you do the roll call, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Robinson?
I'm here.
Deputy Mayor Malakouzian?
Here.
Councilmember Hamilton?
Here.
Councilmember Lee is unable to join us. He will join us here shortly. Councilmember Nieuwenhuis?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
And Councilmember Zahn. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Please rise. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we have a proclamation tonight. It is Dutch American Heritage Day, and I somehow thought of Councilmember Nieuwenhuis to deliver this one. And we are honored by the Honorary Consul of the Netherlands, Leo van Dorp, who will accept it, and we'll have you speak. You can sit there, and then after we'll have a picture. So go ahead, Councilmember.
Thank you, Mayor Robinson. I really appreciate your outfit this evening in the proper orange color there. Being of Dutch heritage, it's my honor to read this proclamation tonight. I just want to say about while I cherish my Dutch heritage and share in the pride of those present tonight, I did want to mention that recent anti-Semitic activities in Amsterdam weigh heavily on my heart, as I'm sure it does for others here. So these events deeply sadden us all, and I sincerely hope the Dutch authorities will act swiftly and decisively to resolve this troubling situation. So with that, again, it's my honor to read this proclamation that states, whereas the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States is the longest unbroken and peaceful relationship with any foreign country, and whereas from the very beginning, Americans and Dutch were drawn together by mutual ideals. The Pilgrims resided in the Netherlands for 10 years before they set sail for the New World. During the Revolutionary War, the Dutch people demonstrated their widespread sympathy for the American struggle for freedom. And whereas the ties between the United States and the Netherlands dates back to the early 17th century, when the Dutch West India Company founded New Netherlands and its main settlements, New Amsterdam and Fort Orange, known today as New York City and Albany. And whereas thousands of American soldiers are buried on Dutch soil, having given their lives in the liberation of the Netherlands during the dark days of World War II. And whereas from the earliest days of our republic, people of Dutch ancestry have made important contributions to American history and culture, with generations of Dutch immigrants enriching the United States with the unique customs and traditions of their ancestral homeland. A country that has given the world great artists, celebrated philosophers, and leaders of international business. And whereas Dutch American Heritage Day is celebrated in both the United States and in the Netherlands to celebrate the long-standing friendship between the two countries. Now, therefore, I, on behalf of Lynn Robinson, Mayor of the City of Bellevue, Washington, and on behalf of its City Council, do hereby proclaim November 16th, 2024 as Dutch American Heritage Day in Bellevue, and urge all residents to join in celebrating the relationship between the Netherlands and the United States, and to recognize the contributions of Dutch Americans to Bellevue and our nation's culture and history. And you could probably do that while having some great Dutch beer and cheese.
Thank you. Oh, thank you for being here, Mr. Van Dorp.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here in Bellevue with all of you on this special occasion.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn Robinson, for hosting us and for the warm times we've maintained during the past 2 years. Thank you, Jared, for presenting the proclamation and for your continued support to the Dutch community in Washington. It's very much appreciated. And thank you, other Bellevue Council members and members of the Dutch community who are present tonight. It is special to celebrate Dutch American Heritage Day with you. Why do we celebrate this day? It's an important question, and there are numerous answers. The easy one is, of course, the historic one. Our nations have a 400-plus year relationship with one another, as it started in 1609, when the Dutch East Indies Company ship, the Half Moon, landed on the shores of what is now Manhattan. And then we sold it later for $1, proving that we're generous rather than cheap. And yes, as Jared mentioned, on November 16, 1776, a small American warship, the Andrew Doria, sailed into the harbor of the tiny Dutch island of St. Eustatius in the West Indies. Only 4 months before, the United States had declared its independence from Great Britain. The American crew was delighted when the governor of the island, Johannes de Graaf, ordered that his fort's cannons be fired in a friendly salute, the first ever given by a foreign power to the flag of the United States. 6 years later, July 1782, John Adams, who became your first ambassador to the Netherlands and the second US president, obtained the first America's loan, 5 million guilders, which is nowadays $50 billion, from 3 banks in America. America returned the favor after World War II with the Marshall Plan, formerly known as the European Recovery Plan. That's the historic answer. Another answer is that we celebrate American Heritage Day to celebrate our profound cultural and economic ties. Today, according to the US Census Bureau, 3.1 million people of Dutch descent call this country home. Mind you, the Dutch population is only 17 million. The Netherlands population is only 70 million. Around 80,000 people in Washington state call themselves Dutch, with large concentration in certain areas. For instance, Linden, north of here, and east of us. Think tulips, apples, etc. The Netherlands is one of the largest investors in the United States. In 2023, Dutch investments and trade supported well over 1 million jobs in the US. But I think the most fundamental reason we celebrate Dutch American Heritage Day is that the people who call themselves Dutch and their forefathers have helped build this country, and some of the most important American values have hidden Dutch origins. The American ideals of free trade and religious liberty have their roots in New Amsterdam, the city we now know as New York. Thomas Jefferson modeled the Declaration of Independence on the Plakkaat van Verlatingen, the 16th century Dutch Declaration of Independence from the Spanish. John Adams remarked that the origins of the 2 republics are so much alike that the history of one seems but a transcript of that of the other. And Benjamin Franklin said, "In love of liberty and in the defense of it, Holland has been our example." I can attest to how natural it was for myself to, in 1993, want to work and move here, and how relatively easy the transition was. To me, that is the hallmark of the Dutch heritage in the US. So today we also celebrate our shared values and love of freedom, and the fact that we are soulmates in many ways. Thank you for being here. It is a great honor.
Thank you. Let's have a picture. Can we have all the people with Dutch heritage at the front, please? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I move to approve the agenda.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. City Clerk, do we have anybody signed up for oral communications?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This evening, there was only one pre-registered speaker for oral communications. So before I start calling that person's name, I'll go over a few of the rules for oral communications. So the time period is for no more than 30 minutes, and topics must relate to City of Bellevue government. People speaking to items on tonight's agenda will be called first, and if time remains, people speaking not on tonight's agenda will be called. The presiding officer is authorized in each category to give preference to those who have not spoken to council within the last 60 days or who will speak to an item that will come in front of the council within the next 60 days. Each speaker is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak and a maximum of 3 speakers per any one side of a particular topic. And with that, I'll call our speaker, who is Vicky Baguette.
Hello, my name is Vicky Baguette. I live at 1337 Belfield Park Lane. I am secretary for the HOA Board of Directors at Belfield Residential Park. I've been a resident at Belfield Residential Park since 2016. The park was established in 1975. Of importance to me is how the park affects a love of nature. There are many adult trees, walking paths, 2 ponds, and a stream historically known as Alcott Stream, with 2 unit buildings scattered throughout the 15-acre property. Fresh flowing water was always key to supporting a variety of wildlife that made use of this resource. These days, it is a silent stream due to pollutants and lack of water flow, which has allowed invasive vegetation to take over. A pump is needed to keep water flowing from the Mercer Slough. Dry weather leaves the Mercer Slough below the level needed to convey the water naturally. The pump system was put out of commission in 2020 when crew members of the Seattle Light Rail accidentally broke one of the pipes, thus stopping water flow from the slough. Light Rail took responsibility for the damage done and replaced the broken pipe. Unfortunately, the ability to turn the pipe back on again was handed to the City of Bellevue, who in turn sent a hold harmless agreement to our HOA stating they would only turn the pump back on if our HOA took responsibility for any future damages to the system. Our HOA did not sign the document because, as time has shown us, there are many players who contribute to what happens to this water conveyance. A culvert exists at the North Pond through which untreated storm water from Surrey Downs enters the waterway. In August of this year, a dump occurred, spewing a thick, bubbling, foul-smelling goo into the North Pond. The alert line was called and city workers came out almost immediately. Samples were taken for their report and it was confirmed to be motor oil. A boom or brush was set down on the water by the dam to block most of the goo to keep it from moving further south into the slough. 2 weeks later, the manager in charge of water quality returned to the location of the Belfield Dam and was satisfied that the boom had done its job as well as possible and removed it. Thus, he advised the city that they did try to track down the dumping that had occurred but were unable to do so. When asked what could be done to stop this happening in the future, he advised a retention pond is needed on the south end of the Surrey Downs neighborhood. This structure would filter out heavy pollutants. And apparently there's a space already selected for that work. In conclusion, the HOA of Belfield asks that the City of Bellevue take this problem seriously. The City of Bellevue must restore power to the pump so fresh water from the slough may again flow into Alcott Stream, and construction of the Surrey Downs retention pond must move forward.
Ms. Baguette.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry, your time has expired. Okay, and with that, that was the end of our pre-registered list. So at this point, I would like to ask if there's anyone else joining us tonight who would like to make a comment to the council. Please raise your hand. I will make one additional comment. Mr. Halverson, I see your hand. Hold on one second, sir. Were you intending to speak on the budget? Okay, so that is my comment, that there is a public hearing this evening. I do have your name on the list. So comments cannot be heard under oral communications related to the public hearing. So the public hearing will come on the agenda later this evening. So if your comments are not related to the budget and you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand.
City Manager, may I ask for follow-up with the Bellefield Residential Park? I know that we've heard from numerous residents about that, and I know that staff has followed up with them, but if we could maybe get a report back to the council on what's going on with that, we'd appreciate it.
Yes, Mayor, we can do that.
Thank you.
Great. And Mayor, I do not see any additional hands online or in chambers. Mr.
Okay.
Zimmerman, I do see your hand, but there is an exclusion order in place regarding your ability to apply public comment. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor.
And City Manager, you do not have a report today, am I correct?
No report tonight.
Okay, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we do have a public hearing tonight, and City Manager, I'll let you introduce that.
Thank you, Mayor, council members. This is the third and final public hearing for the budget process this biennium. And we have Chief Financial Officer John Risha and Financial Strategy and Performance Director Evan Phillips here to provide opening remarks. Okay, looks like they're coming up before the council opens the public hearing. With that, I'll turn it over to John.
Thank you, City Manager, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, members of council. As City Manager suggested, tonight is the third and final public hearing regarding your 25-26 budget and your 2025 through 30 capital improvement program. You have entertained deliberations over the last 2 months following the transmittal of the preliminary budget on September 17th. And tonight, you're seeking some final input after having had your deliberation point. And we're going to step back and turn this back to you so that you can hold your public hearing.
Okay, great. Thank you. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
I move to open the public hearing.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so City Clerk, do we have people signed up for the public hearing?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Here's where we get to a much longer list. There are 25 pre-registered speakers for the public hearing this evening. So before I start calling names, I will indicate that the council did receive some written comments, which are in your desk packet that have been emailed over the last 10 days. And each speaker will be allowed up to 3 minutes to speak during the public hearing. I will call 3 names at a time, given the length of the list. So when you hear your name, go ahead and make your way to the front so you can come to the table when you're up. And with that, I will call our first speaker, which is Brady Nordstrom. The 2 additional speakers after that will be Debbie Lacey and Sarah Langton.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. My name is Brady Nordstrom, and I work at Housing Development Consortium. I'm here specifically to speak on behalf of the East Side Affordable Housing Coalition. This is a group of over 30 East Side-focused organizations that produce and operate affordable housing and provide services to residents in Bellevue. In commenting on the budget, the overall picture is that there's increased investment and emphasis on affordable housing, and for that, we thank you. First, we support the budget commitments to update the 2017 Affordable Housing Strategy, and then take the actions after that for code and policy and programs. This includes appreciation for the ongoing engagement with those that are in the community that are impacted by the housing crisis, as well as those that make and operate the housing. Secondly, we strongly support the funding capacity for the Office of Housing. This includes that $40 million housing reserve fund. So we agree that this would help increase the rate of affordable housing production and close funding gaps for projects, which is also just a critical part of creating affordable housing. So this is the sort of bold thinking that we need, so thank you. Simultaneously, we praise the City of Bellevue for your ongoing commitment to the Arch Housing Trust Fund and Arch operations. Homelessness and housing insecurity don't stop or start at distinct city boundaries. So combining these local with regional strategies work together to scale this impact. And there's also decades of expertise and knowledge in Arch. So we thank you for continuing this legacy that Bellevue helped seed in 1992. And finally, affordable housing and housing in general is more than just funding or financing. It's also how we permit this housing. So we also wanted to thank you for all the work that went into the affordable housing fee reduction program, the expedited permitting for affordable housing that were implemented through Bellevue's Next Right Work. There's reimbursements and process improvements that will be a boon to the city as you increase affordability, inclusion, and stability in the coming years. So thank you a lot for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. The next speaker is Debbie Lacey, followed by Sarah Langton and Philip Block.
Good evening, council members and mayor. Thank you. I'm Debbie Lacey with Eastside for All, supporting Bellevue and other Eastside communities since 2019. Thank you to the council members who came to our community budget priorities event in September with our partners. I'm speaking here to follow up on one of those priorities, increased human services funding that's equitable and inclusive. I appreciate the proposed additional one-time funding of nearly $2.8 million in the budget for human services, but I have 2 points for your consideration, please. First, the regular biennium funding for human services has addressed recommendations from local organizations founded by people of color and immigrants by identifying funding for culturally specific supportive services. This wasn't done for the additional one-time funding. Only 6% of that funding is going to organizations led by and serving communities of color and immigrants, whereas in the regular human services funding, biennium funding, 25% of those funds are culturally specific supportive services supports. This is an opportunity to close the gap in disparities, but instead the outcome will be an increase in disparities experienced by organizations founded by people of color and immigrants at a time when these organizations are already seeing increased requests for support in the past week, and this is on top of their ongoing role as lifelines to communities year-round. Which brings me to my second point. I request respectfully to permanently increase the human services funding amount instead of only allowing one-time additional increases. You know, by the increases in application requests each cycle compared to the funding awarded, the City of Bellevue's size and its projected growth should be adjusting its human services funding to keep pace, similar to how the city has increased funding for public safety in response to growth needs. I speak about this need as an organization that didn't apply for direct services, human services funding, but in strong support of the many small yet mighty community-based organizations that provide critical support in culturally responsive ways, filling gaps to ensure community members who are too often alone and unserved are met with compassion, expertise, and vital resources to live and thrive in Bellevue. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Sarah Langton, followed by Philip Block and Barbara Braun.
Greetings, Mayor Robertson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, and members of the council. My name is Sarah Langton. I am with Langton Public Affairs, located here in Bellevue. Tonight, I am before you as consulting staff for the Eastside Housing Roundtable. As a reminder, the Eastside Housing Roundtable is a broad coalition of the Eastside Affordable Housing Coalition, members of the business community, the development community, the affordable housing development community, our school districts in Lake Washington and Bellevue, our hospitals, and lots of other people in between. It's the largest umbrella of folks coming together on a single topic in my history of working in Bellevue. We have worked on things like the MFTE, the Next Right Work. We brought that to you originally. The C1, the comp plan, and really urging more housing and many other things. I'm here tonight to express our support for the boldest comp plan Bellevue's ever done in a long, long time as it relates to housing. So congratulations and thank you. And also to just offer our support for the development of the Office of Housing. We think that's a great idea. We think keeping the focus on housing and affordable housing, our whole purpose in coming together is to make sure we have more housing and more affordable housing here in Bellevue. And we think a dedicated office will help make that happen, as well as leverage the city's investments that you're making in housing. And we are just grateful that that is happening, and we just wanted to let you know of our support. Thanks.
Thank you. Philip Block, followed by Barbara Braun, and then April Stevens.
Good evening. My name is Philip Block. I am the elected Bellevue School Board Director for Region 1, and I am representing the entire school board and school district leadership. I'm joined tonight by Region 5 Director Jane Aros. Honorable City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to engage you regarding the City of Bellevue's preliminary operating budget and the capital investment program plan. My comments here today largely follow our letter, which we submitted to you earlier this week. Bellevue School District and the City of Bellevue are separate and independent entities, but we have many shared goals and opportunities for alignment in order to support Bellevue youth and families. Bellevue School District is a recognized statewide leader in education that is frequently recognized as the best school district in the state. This impressive performance and outstanding reputation attracts residents and enhances our community. However, like other school districts across the state, BSD is experiencing budget strain due to the current state funding model, and we are restricted in what we can spend money on. After reviewing the city's budget proposals and budgets of other local communities, we've identified 4 areas of strategic investment that we would encourage the City of Bellevue to consider that would support the city's strategic target areas of thriving people and communities, safe and efficient transportation systems, and creating a vibrant economy. These strategic targets include wraparound supports to integrate delivery of city and school services to families. While the draft budget appeared to zero out support for the 2 FTE that currently provide these services, we understand that the city intends to continue this needed support, and we greatly appreciate that support for these essential services. We also have identified support for youth mental health needs. In recent years, BSD and community partners have invested in mental health support for students throughout our educational system. We invite Bellevue to join neighboring cities like Mercer Island and Seattle in helping fund these mental health positions that improve educational performance and reduce future community costs. We've also identified the opportunity to invest in affordable early education services. We would like to encourage the city to work with BSD to better understand the unmet needs and work together to improve preschool availability. These programs directly support working families and help ensure student readiness for kindergarten. Finally, capital investments in safe routes to and from schools. Although the city has proposed approximately $2.5 million in planned investments and studies, this funding will resolve only a fraction of the 131 identified road safety improvements around schools that are needed. Furthermore, the city's planned investments over the next 6 years are less than the $3.5 million BSD is committed to improvements around Newport High School this year. Thank you for considering these requests, and we hope to continue and expand our working relationship between the city and school board to improve outcomes for students and families throughout our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Barbara Braun, followed by April Stevens, and then Court Olson.
Good evening, city leaders. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in favor of funding environmental stewardship. We thank you for the continued commitment to addressing local greenhouse gas emissions. We know you are deeply supportive of this work and committed to trying to make the targets you have adopted for our community. The task before us is immense. During the October 29th ESI update, several points were illuminated. First, we have only achieved an 8% decrease in community-wide emissions as of 2022. We lack data on 2024, but the trend lines shown suggest rising emissions. We collectively lack the roadmap and the cost. We collectively lack clarity on the roadmap and the cost to achieving our emissions targets. People for Climate Action have been proposing a budget for many months showing an additional $10 million a year spent on housing decarbonization, and crosstown public transit would start to put us on track to meet our goals. The good news is, due to recent grants, the funds needed for this biennium have come down to $6 million a year. Currently, with no plan to adequately fund the essential ESI programs this biennium, we have no path to materially reduce community-wide emissions for at least the next 2 years. Our 2030 goal is dead, and our 2050 goal is in jeopardy. The ESI plan update authorized on October 29th will take 1 year to complete. While the plan needs updating, it will not be approved before the 2025 budget. Can we really wait over 2 more years? The city must fund the ESI programs this biennium, particularly the Energy Smart East Side program. The ESI plan update should be phased so the community emissions portion is approved and fully funded next year. We urge the council to spend time gaining a deeper insight into the most important actions needed on the ESI starting at the January retreat. Achieving emissions targets should be elevated to a standalone strategic target. The city's sustainability work should be elevated to report directly to the city manager, as is done in Fort Collins and Ann Arbor. And the city should create an ongoing funding commitment to the 2050 goal so that it can be reached. Several U.S. municipalities have either designated a greater share of their budget or have supplemented their work with new funding sources such as special fees or taxes. Eliminating emissions is a fundamental responsibility to protect the safety and health of our residents and should be treated as a fiduciary duty. We respectfully urge the council to fund ESI this biennium. Thank you.
Thank you. April Stevens, followed by Court Olson, and then Paul Bruno.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and city staff. Thank you for all the work you do for our city. My name is April Stevens. I'm a resident, and I'm speaking in favor of funding to support the city's commitment to reducing our locally generated greenhouse gas emissions. We've heard from most of you, privately in meetings, publicly in council meetings, and during elections at the campaign forums, that you support the goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030 and 80% by 2050. And yet, as you are aware, we are not on track to meet these commitments. The current proposed budget has no plan to adequately fund the ESI programs and to materially reduce community emissions. How can we raise the stature and visibility of these goals? In the 2024-26 priorities, 12 priorities identified by the Bellevue City Council and published, there is no mention of working to achieve these goals. It is not in any of the priorities. Why not make it a priority goal? Or can we make the greenhouse gas reduction commitments a separate and unique strategic target? The strategic target areas are central to the council's focus and to the overall budget effort. These target and priorities guide the city. Can we elevate these goals to put them on track to meeting our commitments? On October 29th, the Environmental Stewardship Department presented their update to the council. Based on the comments and questions from several of you following this presentation, it appears the council was asking for a better understanding of the roadmap and cost to achieve our emissions targets. Is there a way to elevate the Environmental Sustainability Initiative staff so that they report directly to the city manager? Is there a way for you to meet with them in more of a working meeting rather than as a presentation at a council meeting? Climate action is a complex subject, and it would be helpful to be better understood at all levels of city government. You are now 1 week away from adopting the proposed budget. While there are funds appropriated to electrify the city's operations and reduce the city's carbon footprint, all good stuff, it misses the big picture, and it lacks any real effort to address the greenhouse gas emissions from our current building stock, both residential and commercial, despite the fact that they are responsible for 49% of our locally generated emissions. We must do better for our children and our children's children.
The next speaker is Court Olson, followed by Paul Bruno, and then Irene Budlong.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and city manager, as well as finance staff. Appreciate this opportunity to address you this evening. As you all know, I'm commonly representing People for Climate Action. Court Olson is my name. Since we first drafted our list of 4 budget requests in June, some things have changed. Sarah Phillips, the outstanding manager of the Energy Smart Eastside program in all 6 partnering cities, has successfully landed some grant money. Also, since the ballot initiative 2117 failed to pass last week. We are in a better position to see where we go from here. Accordingly, we are reducing our annual request to boost Energy Smart Eastside funding from the prior 5.3 million down to 1.5 million per year. That's a total program boost of 3 million in the biennium. By the way, that drops our total annual budget request down from 9.8 million to 6 million per year. The boosting of the Energy Smart Eastside program's annual budget by 1.5 million per year will allow it to help all of the low and medium income Bellevue families in single family homes to replace their worn out gas furnaces with cleaner electric heat pumps every year. Because heat pumps cost more than gas furnaces, low and middle income families need some additional financial aid, excuse me, that is not otherwise available to them from either Puget Sound Energy or other levels of government. Remember, a total of 1,200 gas furnaces wear out each year in Bellevue. With a fully funded program, it will take over 2 decades to get all 23,000 gas furnaces in Bellevue replaced. That's why the timing of funding for this work is critical. Our city really needs to enable all homeowners to make the transition as their furnaces wear out each year. If we don't do this every year, the city's 2050 greenhouse gas reduction commitment cannot be achieved. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Paul Bruno, followed by Irene Budlong and Chris Marks.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, City Council members, City Manager Carlson, and City staff. Thanks for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. My name is Paul Bruno, and I've been a resident in Bellevue for 6 years now. And in those 6 years, I've really seen Bellevue do some great things, especially when it comes to managing growth and trying to keep Bellevue the city in the park. And now, though, there is an extremely critical thing that needs to be done, and that is to fund and launch programs that will ensure the city can achieve its 2030 and 2050 greenhouse gas emissions control, as you've heard. So this brings me to the second and third priorities of our budget proposal that I think we've spoken with most of you about, and that is to decarbonize multifamily and commercial buildings under 20,000 square feet. As you're aware, there are many of these multifamily apartments and condominiums in Bellevue that are under 20,000 square feet, and PCA believes that these are in need of energy performance enhancements, and some may even need to transition off of gas. So therefore, we recommend that Bellevue budget $2.5 million annually to assist multifamily buildings decarbonize and improve their energy efficiency, especially where the average annual household incomes is less than 150% of the area mean income. In addition, this program would help improve affordable housing. Now, we also recommend that Bellevue budget another $1 million annually to increase efficiency for the commercial buildings that are under 20,000 square feet that qualify as low income, whether they be owned or leased. Similar to the Energy Smart Eastside program, installing heat pumps will be a major factor in greenhouse gas reductions for these buildings. Because it will take several years for the most effective emissions cutting measures to have their desired effect, this budget cycle is critical to reaching Bellevue's commitments. The actions the city does or does not take now in the next 2 years will make or break the ability for Bellevue to lower community-wide emissions by 80% in 2050. So thank you for your time, for everything that you're doing for Bellevue, and everything that you will do for Bellevue.
Thank you. Irene Bedlong, followed by Chris Marks and Alice Meng.
Good evening. Traffic. Everybody knows it's bad, and it's only going to get worse with our increasing population. Sure, we have mass transit, but it's not nearly as effective as it could be. Really, there's three main problems. One is the frequency of buses. The second is that transferring dramatically increases travel time. And the third is the access to light rail is not very good for most of us. So for example, in our household, we take 20 to 30 transit trips per week. And there's only one bus near our house. It only comes once every 30 minutes and sometimes only once an hour. If you need to take a transfer, it'll add about 20 minutes to an hour to just that one trip. The light rail station, it's 4 miles from my house, takes 9 minutes by car, but if I want to take mass transit there, it'll take me over an hour and I have to transfer twice. So in our household, we have the dedication and willingness to take mass transit, but you're making it difficult. The solution, we need dramatic increase in the budget, and I don't mean larger font. Our analysis at People for Climate Action shows that we could significantly improve cross-town transit with about $1 million of funding annually. And according to the City of Bellevue, transportation is our second largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. And as you know, you've made commitments to reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, so this would be an impactful way of doing it. Right now, the little funding that we have going towards climate projects, we've been doing a lot of thinking about what to do. Now's the time to fund the actions towards what we can do. The only way to meet the commitments that we have made is to find these impactful programs like improving the crosstown traffic. We need more frequent buses on the existing routes. We need to add routes that will reduce the need to transfer. And we need to take a hub and spoke approach to get people to light rail quickly and easily. We are just about next year to connect even further using light rail. And that massive investment is unhelpful unless we can get people to those light rail stations quickly and easily. As individuals, we are only able to mitigate climate change on what we can do as a single person. But you here as the city government are in a position to make a big impact for thousands and thousands of people on a daily basis. So please take this budget opportunity to make an impact and fund climate action. Thank you.
Thank you. Chris Marks, followed by Alice Meng, and then Bill Westry. Miss.
Charmaine, Chris may not be able to make it.
Okay, I was just gonna, she did indicate she'd be virtual, but I don't see her on the call.
Family emergency.
Okay, thank you. So the next speaker would be Alice Meng, followed by Bill Westry.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Alice Meng, and I'm here with People for Climate Action to continue to express our concern for the lack of prioritization of climate action as indicated by the respective abysmal funding in the $1.75 billion budget. PCA has previously elaborated on the 4 priorities we urge the city to focus on: decarbonize single-family homes, multifamily homes, small commercial buildings, and to enhance crosstown bus service. I will briefly talk about the last point from a more personal experience. I work as a software engineer for an international media company in Spring District. As someone who does not own a car, I rely on the frequent bus service to get to work from my condo near Crossroads every day. It reduces my stress since I don't have to focus on the road, allows me to safely catch up on emails while commuting, and best of all, reduces carbon emissions. On the flip side, many of my coworkers have to drive to work from other parts of town. A regular lunch topic is how it takes 40 minutes just to park in Spring District because there are so many drivers. Missing meetings due to parking is a common occurrence. When asked why they don't take public transit or alternative commute options, their response is that the buses don't come often enough and or require transfers. As Amazon has made painfully clear with their 5 days a week in-office mandate last month, working in the office and requiring transportation for daily work is a trend that is going to remain. so this problem will not get better on its own. PSC incentives to install EV charging in multifamily homes and adding more EV charging stations are well-intentioned efforts, but insufficient on their own. Not everyone has an electric vehicle, and even if they did, EV drivers still add to the congestion, such as the 40-minute parking ordeal in Spring District. Personal stories aside, 2022 data shows Bellevue only decreased 8% of its carbon emissions. Since we have no new data, a reasonable assumption would be that Bellevue is still only at 8% reduction. No, it's possible that Bellevue has actually increased its emissions. With an 8% reduction assumption, Bellevue still has 84% left of its commitment to reduce emissions by 50% by 2030. It takes time to realize the impact of action, so to truly work towards these commitments, see the benefits of cleaner air and improved community health, more balanced community equity, and improved climate resilience, the city needs to take bold action now. The city just adopted a higher 2050 emissions reduction commitment. Congratulations on the intention to do good. However, intention does not equal impact. What is the plan to get there? By 2050, Bellevue is projected to increase its population by 100,000 and jobs by 70,000. So Bellevue needs to quickly ramp up its multimodal transportation efforts, especially frequent crosstown transit service, since street congestion is already a serious problem. Of the annual $6 million asked, we urge spending on the 4 priorities PCA has detailed. $1 million should go towards enhanced crosstown bus service. Please keep this overall less than 0.7% ask in mind as you proceed with the $1.75 billion budget. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Bill Westry, followed by Courtney Nygaard and Emily Chu.
Greeting, council and staff. I'm Bill Westry, and I wish to make 2 points with regard to the current budget. First, the task of avoiding civilization-altering effects of climate change is a very difficult task that can only be successful given the thorough action of government at all levels, federal, state, but especially local. Second, this must be implemented at the earliest time possible to be effective. I would like to illustrate this by briefing you on the current situation Puget Sound Energy faces in their response to the electric emissions reduction. CETA legislation passed in 2019 requires PSE to ramp down their electric emissions to 0 by 2045. They created yearly targets to meet that. Unfortunately, rather than replace retired coal energy with renewable resources in the first 4-year period, they elected to add clean energy purchase from the energy market to meet their targets. What has happened since is that their load has increased greater than their estimates, weather conditions reduced their hydroelectric production, and most importantly, energy market prices increased substantially, leaving them with 2 options. Either pay the additional $200 million cost of market purchases, which they would pass on to us customers, or miss their clean energy targets. They missed their 2023 target by 8%. They will miss their 2024 target by 11% and project missing their 2025 target by 15%. Either of the 2 options hurts Bellevue, either a rate increase or additional emissions in the building and transportation sectors that ESI is counting on in the wedge chart analysis. In my opinion, having worked with PSE as an advisor to their integrated resource planning process, we need to learn 2 lessons from this. First, getting a quick start is critical. Second, we need to relinquish any illusions that we might have that our government and industry partners in this fight can bail us out of the city's need to perform. They have their own challenges. That is why I believe the city needs to step up the funding for ESI in this budget now. We cannot afford to wait.
Thank you. Courtney Nygaard, followed by Emily Chu, and then Christopher Randalls.
Courtney's not here.
Okay, thank you. So Emily Chu, followed by Christopher Randalls.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to voice my opinion. My name is Emily Chu. I'm 17, a senior at Bellevue High School, and a member of Sustainability Ambassadors. I care about climate because it shapes the world future generations will inherit and shaped the world I grew up, exploring the Pacific Northwest. I want to ensure these experiences endure for the people of tomorrow. I've worked towards sustainability in various ways. I wrote to the Seattle Times against Initiative 2117, which threatened to cut crucial public transit funding. I also organized school initiatives like tracking our carbon footprint from transportation and collaborated with Sound Transit to create classroom curricula focused on sustainable practices. Thank you for expanding our city's sustainability staff and supporting the work they've done to lower emissions from buildings and support environmental justice. Bellevue's Environmental Stewardship Plan sets a goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030, and we need to accelerate its implementation if we are to meet it. The building and transportation sectors make up over 85% of Bellevue's emissions, meaning our efforts to fund energy efficiency programs and public transit expansion are essential to any significant progress. Expanding the mobility implementation plan is critical. We need more frequent cross-town bus services to connect neighborhoods, park and rides, and transit centers to reduce emissions and give residents viable transit options. Not only does transit expansion cut congestion and improve air quality, but it also supports equity by offering everyone greater access to sustainable transportation. Taking bold climate action now also brings additional benefits: cleaner air, lower rates of asthma, reduced energy bills from efficiency upgrades, and more green jobs. A livable climate is essential to my future, and Bellevue must act now to secure it. Please, accelerate the funding and implementation of the Environmental Stewardship Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Christopher Randalls, followed by Raghav Chaturvedi and Barbara Hughes. Mr. Randalls is joining us virtually. Mr. Randalls, can you hear me? Mr. Randalls?
Yes, I can hear you, Charmaine. Can you hear me?
Yes, sorry, the mute unprompt was a little late there. Go ahead.
No worries. Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, council members, and staff. Chris Randall speaking on behalf of Complete Streets Bellevue, the organization that represents people who walk, bike, roll, and take transit in the East Side's largest city. We're also the ones that led a coalition of 10 organizations back in July to urge increased support for and more rapid delivery of Vision Zero funding. We're really appreciative of the material increases in this budget for street safety, from the new Safe Speeds program to the Safe Routes to School program to bike funding and more. This budget is great progress towards our city's bold but achievable vision where by 2030, nobody dies or gets seriously injured on a Bellevue street. We also wanted to express our appreciation for Councilmember Hamilton and Councilmember Zahn asking staff to continue study of a transportation benefit district into 2025, because Bellevue is doing so much great work designing and planning projects that will improve safety for all road users, but realizing our plans and building these projects will take dedicated funding that we believe the TBD is the best tool to provide. From 2021 to 2023, staff worked hard to conduct road safety assessments in your schools to identify hundreds of projects that could be implemented to protect families getting around Bellevue neighborhoods. But estimates are that implementing all of these projects will cost $140 million, much more than the $2.5 million currently allocated. And back in October, your body authorized staff to conduct new RSAs of high-injury network streets like Bellred Road, Northup Way, and more. This is a process that will undoubtedly generate even more project concepts that will require even more resources to implement. And way back in 2014, your Transit Master Plan identified speed and reliability projects that could improve the rider experience for the thousands of Bellevue residents who take transit every day. But most of these projects are no closer to completion over a decade later. We believe a Vision Zero TBD is the best tool for the city to use to bring these projects to fruition. A Vision Zero TBD that focuses on the rapid deployment of quick-build safety infrastructure could make a sizable dent in that backlog of RSA projects. A Vision Zero TBD could provide resources to fund on-street bicycle improvements on Northup Way, 100th Avenue Northeast, and 116th Avenue Northeast, improving safety and accessibility for people on two wheels. And a Vision Zero TBD can help fund those transit improvements that help our whole transportation system run more smoothly by shifting more people out of their cars and into safer, more sustainable modes of transportation, all at an average cost of just $2.50 a month per Bellevue household. With the changing political landscape nationally, now it's more important than ever that we find ways to use our own resources to meet our own needs, and continuing that discussion around a TBD represents great progress in that endeavor. Thank you to each of you for your service to our community, and we're looking forward to staying engaged going forward.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Raghav Chaturvedi, and followed by Barbara Hughes, and then Samuel Rodriguez.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. My name is Raghav Chaturvedi, a 14-year-old ninth grader at International School. I'm a member of the Sustainability Ambassadors, a nonprofit that aims at rapidly advancing a sustainable future, which should be a critical and common mission for us all. Maintaining a healthy environment for our future also includes the fight against climate change, as its effects are clearly observed around our bioregion. To give a snapshot of my personal efforts towards this sustainability goal, I have reduced my daily water usage and implemented different campaigns at my school, like Turn Off the Lights Day and Carbon Commute Count. These both aim to identify and lower my school's energy usage and carbon emissions. I also want to take a moment and thank you, City Council, for your efforts towards increasing the size of the sustainability staff so that they can cover more of the goals in Bellevue's environmental stewardship plan. This has made numerous endeavors, like reducing carbon emissions and creating cleaner transportation, more achievable. With that said, it is essential that we keep picking up the pace toward our goal of decreasing greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030. Implementing the plan quickly and effectively is really important for my future, along with the communities. It's important for Bellevue to fully fund the environmental stewardship plan in order to achieve our agreed-upon climate goals. This means targeting the buildings and transportation sectors, where about 85% of Bellevue's current emissions occur. Now is the time to look at whether projects such as the Mobility Implementation Plan are fully funded, so they can swiftly advance. Investing in transportation, especially a cross-town bus service, can help get people where they want to go, including park and rides and transit centers. At the same time, improving the energy efficiency of multi-family homes and commercial buildings can help people reduce our carbon footprint and help people save money too. As we implement actions to address climate change, it also brings other benefits to the community, such as cleaner air, less asthma, and green jobs. Along with other sustainability ambassadors from Bellevue, I am trying to lead by example. We are reducing the footprint of our commuting to school, as it is absolutely essential in maintaining a livable and healthy climate for my generation. It is time that we move as quickly as we can, since 2030 is really not far away. City Council, please do everything in your power to step up the pace of action on the environmental stewardship plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara Hughes, followed by Samuel Rodriguez and Lolita Upala.
Good evening. My name is Barbara Hughes, and I'm the board president of Bellevue Farmers Market. With me tonight is Phyllis White, one of our board members. Bellevue Farmers Market is a small but impactful non-profit, now in our 21st year, of providing a vibrant place where Washington's farmers can sell directly to the people of Bellevue and the surrounding area. A place to interact directly with the farmer who grows your food. We also support numerous local small businesses who sell at our market, including some brand new businesses, enriching Bellevue's local economy. In common with many farmers' markets, our vendor stall fees cover around half of our operating expenses. For the remainder, we rely on donations from private individuals and sponsorship from local businesses. I should also acknowledge our wonderful volunteers who donate thousands of hours of their time, many of them from Bellevue high schools, without whom we could not operate. The Bellevue Farmers Market is more than a place to buy fresh local products. It's an experience where people can connect and celebrate in Bellevue's urban landscape. Just blocks from downtown, every Thursday from May to October, plus 2 Saturday holiday markets. Live music is a critical part of our market as it provides a space for local musicians to perform. and be paid, whilst encouraging our shoppers to eat good market food for dinner and linger into the evening. Music and our children's education programmes help foster community. We believe that Bellevue's Farmers Market is a critical space for Bellevue's urban residents to meet and belong. We are thankful for your sponsorship in 2024, and we respectfully ask that you consider increasing that funding for 2025. At this time, we are estimating our music costs alone to be in excess of $11,000 for next year. So that's an area where we would truly appreciate more sponsorship. With thanks for your support, and please come visit our fall market on Saturday, November the 23rd, and the holiday market on Saturday, December the 21st. Both are from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., rain, snow, or shine. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Samuel Rodriguez, followed by Lolita Opala, and then Nicole Myers.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson and Deputy Mayor, staff, and everyone in the place. I'm Samuel Rodriguez. I'm CEO, founder of Biz Diversity. We are a multicultural business community. We are closer to 1,000 members in the state of Washington. Out of that, 60 members are here in the city of Bellevue. I do business here in and out with the members. I also part of the many small businesses and nonprofits that are part of the BIPOC, immigrant, as well as diverse ethnic groups. Our companies have the capacity to understand the different ways and how Bellevue City welcome an inclusive community. In that case, we are looking to do more collaboration work in a manner through the CBOs that are represented here today, where the East Side for All, and other aspects of what we're looking to have more human resources and business opportunities for a capability of incrementing way for these small businesses to stay, to live, and to work in Bellevue, where there is an affordability of being able to sell goods, to rent, to live in the place. We have an understanding that the people that want to stay in Bellevue and be a part of Bellevue as a company, as growing out into the businesses, it is important that any type of budget associated to economic development, an opportunity to foment the diversity and the aspects of creating a way for have that equity and inclusion into the businesses that are within the aspects of working together. It is important to work with the nonprofits and the cities to find ways for small businesses, minorities that are able to distribute and connect and expand through cross-cultural engagement. We know that there is a new currency out there, and that is cultural wealth. Cultural wealth gives us the engagement, the stories, and an opportunity for be a part of a community, to expand on our opportunity as a small business owner, to grow within the community and give access to many small businesses that are underrepresented within the community. Thank you very much for hearing to me.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lolita Opala, followed by Nicole Myers, and then Warren Halverson.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lalita Opala, go by she, her, Executive Director for Indian American Community Services. Thank you for considering the much-needed increased funding for affordable housing in this human services budget. I do want to, however, remind you, Bellevue City Council, that Bellevue is home to a very large immigrant community, and support for organizations providing culturally and linguistically relevant support is, we hope, key in your human services and the one-time human services budget too. In your one-time funding, you have not prioritized your grassroots BIPOC community-based organizations who provide deep, comprehensive case management with micro budgets and minimum capacity. These are the CBOs that are the go-to safe places for community members from BIPOC communities. We depend on additional human services funding to continue to provide comprehensive wraparound support. And it pains me that once again we find ourselves missing in your priorities in the one-time human services funding despite submitting our needs. There is a dire need for crisis services supporting survivors of domestic violence, the epidemic of mental health impacting youth and individuals from BIPOC communities, and supporting small businesses and economic development for these small businesses in Bellevue. And I hope you can consider to rethink your one-time human services funding and be really inclusive of grassroots organizations who are currently missing in it. Imagine a high schooler trying desperately to get help for her mom who is being abused by the father but ends up in detention because the father has the foresight to file a complaint on a public dispute. The shame, fear, and pain this team goes through to free her mom from detention will not make her reach out to the police or any one of your large traditional organizations. Because she does not know or trust. Rather, she meets her community organization every weekend in her year-round youth leadership training and has built deep trust with her advisor in the program, who she will reach out to. It is the advisor who will spend 22 hours that week, 22 hours in our micro budget, by the way, to get the legal help, counseling, and therapy the teen and her mom needs. It is this grassroots organization that will ensure the mom attends a free legal clinic to know her rights. And if she moves out, it is this grassroots organization that gets that mom a job, rental assistance for the family, and groceries. Nowhere in this true story is a large agency involved. I thank you for listening, and I really request you to reconsider that one-time human services funding to include grassroots organization in it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Nicole Myers, followed by Warren Halverson, and then Sana David. And Ms. Myers is joining us virtually. Ms. Myers, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Great. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the chance to speak tonight. Now, a lot has changed in the last week. I certainly wasn't expecting a trifecta. And I think the lack of gridlock in DC will mean that things are going to happen really fast. It's certainly plausible that we'll have an economy that's running hot with deficit spending. It's also very plausible that we'll have deportations and tariffs while the government is being drowned in a bathtub. And some people are talking about a couple years of pain. Now, there are an infinite number of possibilities in between. And I think just given the uncertainty, it's important to maintain as much flexibility as we can in the next few months and also in the mid-biennium. It's easy to imagine that cuts for FEMA would reduce grants to firefighters that might affect Bellevue's exposure to smoke events. Maybe there will be opportunities to buy federal land. Maybe the state will shift education funding around to cover shortfalls once we're not getting funding for title in schools and our colleges need more support. We might need to help out landlords who are losing Section 8 money so that those properties don't just get scooped up by private equity. I noticed in the budget, we've, made expectations about funding that we're going to get from the federal government, including an IRA tax credit for electric vehicle charging projects that we were hoping to get funds from in 2025 and 2026, an upwards boost funding for childcare from Housing and Urban Development, TIFIA loan money for transportation improvements in Bellevue. And I just don't know that we can expect that those funds are actually going to come through for us. There also are about $60 million in intergovernmental revenues that we're expecting for each of the 2 coming years. And I hope we can increase the size of our operating reserves and make a new council reserve so that we can, play it safe until we get to the end of the session in Olympia, and then make additional decisions about what we can allocate. I think we should really fund the core services now, maybe allocate 6 months of funding for certain ongoing programs that we find very valuable, but try to push out decisions on more elective spending until we have a little certainty about what the state is going to do in response to the changes in DC. I also hope that as city council members, you'll take a close look at the terms of our debt obligations and just make sure that, we have a plan, even in times of significant uncertainty and possible, difficulties in making our projects happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Warren Halverson, followed by Sana David and Larissa Chuprina.
Good evening. My name is Warren Halverson. My wife and I have lived in Bridle Trails for 50 years, and now my daughters and their families reside in one of Bellevue's most wonderful communities. A little change in venue, please. I'm here to support your current budget and speak specifically to public safety, the City of Bellevue's #1 priority. A bouquet. In November of 2020, almost 4 years ago, you listened to Bellevue citizens, heard directly from the police, Chief Shirley, and Fire Captain McKinney, as well as experts in public safety. A great forum. And you took decisive action with funding to improve Bellevue's public safety, CCAT, and public transit funding. Thank you. In your recent materials, all of you put in 67 questions and answers, 6 directly related to safety. Question 55 probably gets down to the heart of the public safety challenge. While signing bonuses might help, we are down 27 police officers. Attrition and the inability to hire is destroying even our best efforts. We are barely staying even. Hiring 27 officers has to be the #1 priority for Bellevue in this budget. It is often said that you can't spend your way to problems, through problems. I agree. Considering this, my second ask is for the staff and council members to engage in open conversation about public safety with police officers, even survey them. Ask, how can we help you do your job better? Thoughts that come to my mind are review and eliminate processes and procedures as a result of defund the police movement that have little or no benefit today. Consolidate the 8 advisory groups. Improve the issue of police immunity. Make shoplifting a crime. Another consideration is examine California's recent referendum 36 to turn some misdemeanors into felonies and giving longer sentences for certain crimes. A case study and point that we could learn from. Your question 54, the Sound Transit statistics for property incidents and violent crimes 2019-2020 are very alarming. That's on Sound Transit. Need updating and further detail. Question 60, CCAT, lessons are well done and worthy of further study. Now, some might say, I'm running out of time, we don't have a public safety problem in Bellevue, but let me share this. A couple of months ago, one of my daughters noticed a suspicious car in her neighborhood. A couple of hours later, when it was still there, she called the non-emergency number, reported it. Later that evening, the police checked it out and arrested one of the occupants who had an outstanding arrest warrant. The next day, a fire unit and police officers were on the scene at nearby vacant house. I understand 6 individuals were arrested, each having previous arrests outstanding. Recently, there were reports on the Vine, which is our next door, of the daytime burglaries, which was shared by residents of Woodridge, as was a community member from Lock Haven and a small business person to you at city council meetings. Our police force is busy, working hard to protect us. Let this be a budget,
Halverson.
a Vision Zero plan for public safety.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Sana David, followed by Larissa Chuprina, and then Angela Fan.
Larissa Chuprina now.
Sana David, I believe.
Yeah.
Sorry. Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Sana David. I am 15 years old, and I am in my sophomore year at Interlake High School. I have spent all of my 15 years growing up in Bellevue, surrounded by greenery and the natural worlds, and this is the immense privilege that has led me to a passion for environmental sustainability. I am a member of a youth organization called Sustainability Ambassadors, which is composed of young people from across King County. The purpose of Sustainability Ambassadors is to drive measurable impact in our communities to affect a more sustainable future. My speaking today is one way of doing so. I'd like to start by thanking you for your support of eco-friendly transportation through the creation of the Mobility Implementation Plan. As part of my efforts with sustainability ambassadors, I am currently working with 2 schools to measure the carbon footprint of student commutes. This is part of a broader carbon commute campaign that multiple ambassadors are undertaking. Ultimately, the goal is to reduce the carbon footprint of students through spreading awareness of eco-friendly other travel options. I'm doing this because I want to help the city of Bellevue meet our goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions 50% by 2030. But we cannot do this alone. Bellevue has been struggling to address high carbon emissions from transportation. To reduce them, we must implement everything that has been outlined so far in the Mobility Implementation Plan. We need to expand the availability of public transport, especially crosstown bus service, and promote green transportation options. The Bellevue People for Climate Action Group has found that crosstown bus service is especially important for an immediate reduction in carbon emissions. In other words, we must allocate considerable funding for the Environmental Stewardship Plan and increase the pace of the improvements that have been planned. The timely implementation of this plan will impact not only me, but so many more people like me, all of the sustainability ambassadors, people at my school, people in my community, and across the wonderful city of Bellevue. I love this city, and I really think that we can do a lot to work together to ensure a livable and sustainable future for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Larissa Chuprina, followed by Angela Fan and Adam Dibba.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Larissa Chuprina. I am an educator, interpreter, translator, and bridge builder among communities, languages, and cultures. I am here to support the initiative of affordable housing and also human services, which are so necessary to support this idea of happiness for all, as in the Constitution states, and to be able to contribute to the community that builds and sustains the affordable for all, not only public housing, but also for those who work and can afford to live in this beautiful city of Bellevue. I would like to speak about educators, teachers, English language educators who are now equated to gig workers. They do not have full-time employment and have to support themselves in different ways. Language providers who are so necessary now for human services and other in other areas are outsourced. How can we use common local talent so that the people who bring talents here are treated and valued for what they are bringing and can afford to live in this beautiful city? I also want to support a common place for cross-cultural engagement, like cross-cultural center that has been discussed for many years, and that can be a place for common engagement, and the place that we can find common solutions and can support each other. So thank you for all initiatives and your funding for so important projects. However, there are several areas that can be taken in systemic way so that we all can contribute to the implementation of the projects that are directed for the betterment of the whole society. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Angela Fan, followed by Adam Dibba and Yuan Ming Zhao. Ms. Fan is joining us virtually. Ms. Fan, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can. Your time begins now.
Good evening, City Council members. Thank you for this opportunity and again for your ongoing work in our city. I'm here to stress the critical role that our local organizations play in supporting Bellevue's diverse communities. Bellevue's strength, again, lies in its diversity, including our communities of color, immigrants, people with disabilities, and many others. Our organizations are dedicated to meeting unique cultural, linguistic, and accessibility needs, making them essential partners in ensuring that everyone in Bellevue has access to resources and support. I'm deeply concerned that the current funding landscape, which fosters competition among these organizations, threatens to undermine our shared mission. While competition may drive efficiency in other sectors, in the human services realm, it fragments resources and often creates barriers to equitable service delivery. Organizations end up vying for the same limited funds, forcing tough choices between serving broad populations or specializing in critical needs for targeted groups like our disabled populations. This ultimately hinders our collective ability to serve Bellevue effectively and inclusively. I also find it uncomfortable to even have to say that it is vital to recognize the need for continued funding for affordable housing and rental assistance. Access to stable housing is fundamental to a community's health and well-being, and in a city like Bellevue, no one should have to worry about losing their home. However, the fact that our organizations are in a position of having to constantly advocate for their organizations against orgs that serve our basic needs speaks to a larger systemic problem. Human services are the backbone of our diverse community, from housing assistance and mental health services to programs for youth, seniors, and people with disabilities, and all of the organizations that serve our culturally diverse communities. Our human service organizations work tirelessly to ensure that everyone in Bellevue has the support they need to live with dignity and stability. But the demand for these services has increased sharply in recent years, and our resources are being stretched. I urge Council to consider increasing funding for human services as a proactive measure. In a city as dynamic and growing as Bellevue, we have a responsibility to make sure that these services are not only maintained, but strengthened. Investing more in human services is an investment in the overall health and well-being of our city. Thank you for considering this, and again, thank you for the work that you do for our city.
Thank you. Adam Dibba, followed by Yuan Meng Zhao.
Good evening to you all. My name is Adam Diba, Executive Director and founder of Africans on the East Side. On behalf of Africans on the East Side, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to the City of Bellevue and its council members for the opportunities and grants we have received. These resources have been instrumental in allowing us to engage with our community, particularly the often forgotten voices and families we work with each day. For 26 years, I have had the privilege of volunteering in this city while raising 3 amazing daughters. And I have been a firsthand positive impact that dedicated community support can bring. Now, as a 501c3 organization, we provide culturally relevant food and resources to support youths and families, empowering them and fostering a stronger, more connected community. However, as the demand for these services grows, so does the need for additional funding and capacity. Karen and I have our dedication of working together since 2008 on this, but we have never got a single paid check come to us, and nobody knows how we are surviving. We hope to partner with experienced individuals who can support us in our growth and help us reach even more members within our community. Thank you to the city, but we hope that you can give us more to show you what we can do, the talent we have, and the lives that we have changed. Thank you to Eastside for All for always supporting us, and to all the grassroots organizations that are within your hands, who you guys can support and see the talent that they bring in to this beautiful city. I'm an immigrant from the Gambia, the Smiling Coast. I've been in Bellevue for almost 35 years. I dedicate my life here. I dedicate my youths and my families are all in the Gambia, but I call Bellevue home and I stayed here because we are needed. So please think about the budget and give us funding to continue doing the work. Thank you to you all.
Thank you. The final speaker on our pre-registered list is Yuan Meng Zhao.
Good evening, Mayor Robinson, Deputy Mayor Malakutian, council members, and staff. I am Yuemeng, a car-free resident of Overlake Village in Redmond who has the privilege to visit Bellevue by light rail to shop and dine. I would like to thank the city for working on and holding meetings on the budget, and would like to suggest 2 ideas that could increase the liveliness and productivity of the downtown area. Firstly, I would like the city to fund better pedestrian signaling in at least the downtown and Wilburton areas. I believe, for example, that wider sidewalks, no right on red signs, leading pedestrian walk signals, and protected bike lanes would encourage more people to get out of their cars and walk or roll around their neighborhood instead. There are many local businesses and attractions around here, and when we decide that being a pedestrian or cyclist is too unpleasant or unsafe, we often take a car, missing a bunch of those sites and isolating ourselves from our own community in the process. Secondly, I am guessing a lot of people who work in the city do not live in the city. Sometimes it is by choice, but I would not be surprised if many people are being priced out. As a result, I would like the city to fund more inclusionary zoning and related developments. If people are able and willing to live near the workplace, for example, they could save time in their day or even walk to work, leading to a healthier community. In the end, I would love for the city to have less congestion and pollution, not because of road widening projects, but because people feel good walking or rolling around the community. The Grand Connection project is grand and great, and I believe the city can take even more steps. I would also like to thank the other speakers tonight for helping me discover new blind spots in my own and hopefully the city's thinking. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. That was the end of our pre-registered list. So at this point, I would ask if there is anyone else joining us this evening in council chambers or online who would like to make a comment. And if so, please raise your hand. Okay, Mayor, I do not see any additional hands online or in the room. I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I don't know why I did that. Just had it in my hand. I think it's because I wanted to take a break. So let's come back at 20 till. Okay, so we are into our study session items. We have 2 items to discuss tonight. City Manager, would you like to introduce them?
Thank you, Mayor and council members. So tonight we are going to wrap up our budget presentations, including John and Evan will provide a summary of some of the proposed technical changes that we are asking for or seeking from the council. And then also we'll do an overview of some one-time application of the council contingency in 2025. I would like to acknowledge that we recognize many more requests for funding were sought this year and were identified through the budget process, including from the public, which you heard many tonight. And we just are not able to address them all. So many more than we could address with a flat budget year. But fortunately, there are pathways for us to continue these conversations on important issues throughout next year, and we will give consideration to those as we also look at resources in 25 and 26. So tonight we are requesting council consider providing direction to staff to return at next week's council meeting, November 19th, with appropriate legislation, including any adjustments to the preliminary budget for the final adoption. And with that, I'll welcome John Risha and Evan Phillips back to the table to start walking through the presentation.
Thank you, City Manager. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, thank you again for having us as we enter this home stretch and seek guidance from you as we get ready to prepare our final legislation. Tonight, Evan is going to take you through many of those technical changes as well as a quick check-in on the legislation that will be coming before you and the calendar of where we're at. And then I will walk you through some of those proposed changes, and we will entertain any questions that you might have remaining and help you however we can.
Thank you, John. Just to go through again, the calendar
We are going to be going through the calendar as well as the adoption legislation tonight, as John mentioned, the technical adjustments, the potential uses of council contingency, in which case you all will be able to have a discussion on those items before we seek consideration of your direction at the conclusion of your discussion. You've seen this slide now 8 times, and we've had 8 sessions, believe it or not, 4 information sessions and now 3 public hearings on the budget. Going back to July 9th, we've had budget workshop, we have had our original transmission, public hearing, overview of resources, as well as 3 nights on our STAs, and now our final public hearing and hopefully direction this evening before potential adoption of the budget next Tuesday night. So this should look familiar to many of you. I know we have a few new council members who have not been through the adoption night process. This is the routine legislation that goes forward on the other ordinances section of your agenda packet for November 19th, should we receive your direction tonight. It includes our fees and rates. So every year we adopt our development services fee ordinance, and every 2 years we adopt the utilities rates for our utilities that are within the utilities department. Within our policy section, we do have 2 new items that is different from past practice. We have a Waterworks financial policy sunset resolution coming before you, which will sunset our separate Waterworks financial policies, which have now, per our discussion and collaboration, will be brought into the citywide comprehensive financial policy. So those 2 are being blended together. And we are also doing something different this time around with updated personnel classification and wage tables. These are normally attachments inside the umbrella ordinance, which is the last item on the list, but these are being broken out as they're not specifically tied to the budget going forward. We are also awarding the Human Services Grants Resolution and CDBG ordinance as well as part of the Human Services Commission work, and that comes forward before all of you on adoption night, as well as 2 actions on property taxes, including a banking of the regular property tax levy, as well as the property tax levy ordinance. And again, within the preliminary materials, there is a 1% assumed adjustment within the property tax ordinance, and that must be adopted by November 30th of this year. And finally, we have the one thing that brings it all together, which is the 2025-2026 umbrella ordinance, which adopts all of the appropriation, all the spending authority, the estimated revenues by fund. There are a number of technical adjustments, and it is important to note that these technical adjustments are exactly that. They are technical. They do not have a substantial policy impact on any of the discussions that we've had over the last 8 sessions. In many cases, these are net zero changes or they're backed by existing revenue. For example, the acceptance of grants that have happened since the preliminary budget was transmitted to you all on September 17th. So some of this is a point in time as legislation has passed, as there's been ordinances and adjustments over the last couple of months. Those are now adjusted within the adopted materials to reflect actions that you have already taken within the last few months and making sure they carry forward into 2025 and to 2026. That includes adjustments of timing and capital improvement projects. Again, with the passage of time, we have more information about our capital improvement program and the timing of those different projects, and those changes have been reflected. But again, there's no substantial policy or implementation change as part of those adjustments, as well as since we have a new way of looking at our finances this year, we have taken some extra care to make sure that everything is categorized in the right place. So there has been some simple accounting adjustments between funds, but those will have no impact on the outcomes of the budget. It is merely a categorization issue. One thing we do want to point out, though, is as we're reviewing our financial policies, we have decided to include appropriation for our development services and utilities contingencies. These are backed by existing reserves within development services line of business, as well as our utilities fund. And it will have no impact on the budget itself. I mean, it will have an appropriation adjustment, but it will have a negligible impact to the outcome. These are contingencies that we hope not to use, but this provides additional flexibility from a budget perspective for the directors of those respective departments to access those funds should they need them. And with that, I'll pass it back to John.
Thank you. Relative to those contingencies, it is important to note that those have existed as past practices. They are just spelled out within the comprehensive financial policies, and the definition and way they're used are spelled out there as well. So there's much more transparency about them. As we think about and go into the next phase of this discussion, I would just want to take a moment to just remember that this budget is in the backdrop of a very different environment than historical. We're right now experiencing the tail end, we hope, of some rougher and tougher economic times. In 2024, our revenues have been down, and as we go into 25-26, we are not seeing a significant increase in revenues. As a result, the budget that you've been deliberating over is relatively flat in the services, and pretty much continuing what we have done in the last biennium with a few small additions. As a result of that, you've provided us guidance along the way that, different from your past practice of waiting until the end of a year to invest some of your council contingency, you actually have offered to provide some additional pre-funding of this year, and we are greatly appreciative of that. And tonight, I actually want to go through some of what we believe we have heard from you, just to validate that these are the areas for this different practice that you've done. And we're, again, grateful for that. We are hopeful, and I do say hopeful, that our mid-buy will actually be more robust. And I apologize in advance, we may need a couple meetings for mid-buy instead of one. But if the economy recovers as we hope it does, there may be some additional policy discussions. And as a result of many of the deliberations and the planning efforts that are going on this year, you might find yourself in a position of looking at some different kinds of investments as we go into 26 before the 27-28. And so we look at this next year as a year of work and a year of hope for those investments. And with that, I'll jump into some of the potential council amendments around using the council contingency. The first category really is around community event support. A small cost recovery fund for fees associated with events at city sites. There has been a historic practice of doing this. It had waned and was sporadic over the years. This feels like a really good time while we look at our underlying rate structures to find out how we can help support community events in a way that we haven't. Next up is about $50,000 for cultural events and pop-ups supporting our small businesses. But we also want to make sure, based off of what we've heard, to include a category for our farmers markets. And we have more than one here in the city. Additionally, about $250,000 to extend or create a pilot for opening up City Hall for events for Friday nights and Saturdays, and some of those extended hours that support for it. Due to the nature of that, it is a 2-year pilot to take a look at that. It takes a bit of lead time to get to those events, so this is one of those areas where the dollars spread into the next period. In terms of council resources, there is an additional $80,000 proposed. These funds would be made available with the intent of travel and education for council, though it is very clear that your council rules would need a good look during your upcoming retreat process. But if you move forward with these, those funds would be available for then you adjust your rules. The next category is environmental stewardship. And in this particular area, as we step into it, I do want to say that while there are a couple of categories of additional investment that have been identified, this biennium's budget is an increase of about $15 million over the previous biennium's budget. Or about a 79% increase. The largest percentage increase of which is within our community investments. And that is in large part to the great work of the staff that have been working so hard to draw in more grant dollars and really help our city dollars go even further. And so that increase from about a little more than 19 million to a little more than 34 million is a sizable increase even in our flat budget period. But with that, this budget also would propose to invest an additional $50,000 in that supplemental investment for housing, affordable housing units to provide EV charging capacity. $50,000 would provide about 100 to 150 units with the supplemental access. Additionally, as we're going into the process of updating the ESI plan for the city, staff wanted to bring forward the idea of having a pool of investment dollars once you've had a chance to look at that plan to make sure that the resources are available to get them to the right place and seed some of those next community investments without predetermining what they are, but utilizing some of the Energy Smart Eastside tools that are available. And then comes up the area of human services. When it comes to human services, this budget had already proposed a supplemental $2.5 million. In listening to your engagement, we found a way to increase that by adding about $290,000 to bring that to about $2.79 million of supplemental investment. What that would do would prioritize youth services, rental assistance, and shelter and housing funding. There, attached to the agenda memo, is the detailed list of who that would fund. I do want to pause for a moment here. Tonight you heard testimony and saw a letter from one of our jurisdictional partners, Bellevue School District. And they have been a very strong partner to us throughout the process. And we want to assure you that the staffing for the wraparound services has become part of our base budget. So it doesn't require a supplemental add-on. And so it felt like it got lost in the process, but it is still there. As we continue to look at that, the areas of mental health, with this supplemental funding, it actually adds the funding to meet those requests that we have received through the Human Services Commission review. So there's some great investment, additional investment there. There are other categories of early learning and childcare. Bellevue School District will benefit from about $300,000 over the biennium of additional investment, but this is the largest area of supplemental investment in those dollars. We have concurred with them that this is a priority area that is a great set of investments, and our staff have been working very hard to make sure that those next sets of dollars are following those next needs. And finally, the issue of safe routes to school that they brought forward. That continues to be a high priority to the city and is a critical piece of our infrastructure. Our transportation department continues to prioritize it and is actively seeking grants to extend our dollars to make them go even further. And we will be continuing to work on safe routes to school, both in their official form and with the connections that go with those. And finally, the last of the investments was actually taking that next step to make sure that the energy grid has the capacity to support our growth, and taking our traditional work of where we have brought in a third party to validate where we're at, make sure that we have that our provider PSE and that capacity is going to be there as we need it. Thank you for that foresight to bring those dollars forward as we go into the LUPA process. This will help us be there in advance of that need and really bring that forward. So it's an important set of timing. With that, here's the summary of that $895,000 of the $1 million of council contingency for 2025. And we are appreciative of what we think we heard and hope that this list brings forward and meets your interests as well. And with that, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council, we hand back to you for any questions or deliberations you have, and look forward to hearing whatever direction you may have for us this evening.
Okay, great. I'll start us off, then we'll go Deputy Mayor, Councilmember Stokes, Councilmember Neuenhuis, Hamilton, Councilmember Zahn, and Councilmember Lee. So I first of all want to thank the public for the amazing public input that they have given us throughout this process. The 2 public hearings, the many emails and phone calls and comments have been very helpful in a really tough budgeting time. This is not an easy budget. I want to commend you, John, and our new city manager, Diane Carlson, for this first big budget that you have both authored. And thank all the staff for all the work that you have done to present this to our council. It is a balanced budget where not every city has a balanced budget this year. It is responsive and it's responsible. So I appreciate all the work that has gone on. Having said that, it's not a perfect budget. This is one of the few years that I've been on the council where we have not been able to get everything we want. somehow, some way. And I am really hopeful that at the mid-buy, we find that we have more revenue than we anticipated, and that we can have some discussions about increasing funding to areas that we have all agreed we need to increase funding to. And I'm grateful for the city manager for getting some money cobbled together for human services. We all agreed that we wanted to increase human service funding. And so I'm very gratified that we were able to come up with some one-time money just to get us through the next year or two. So I appreciate that very much. I hope, well, you kind of, the Bellevue School District had some very interesting requests that I would love to look into more as we go into the next year and think about the mid-buy. And the small business support, I thought that you know, we have a great women minority-owned business Startup 425 program through our economic development, but maybe there's something we're missing. So these are conversations I'm looking forward to having with the community a little bit further as we move into the bid-buy to refine some of the things that we are looking at today. But I feel very good about this budget. Again, I'm not 100% satisfied, but I don't think any of us will be. And you've done a really good job. And it just makes me more motivated for the mid-buy to really do it even better this next time around and hopefully have more money to work with. So thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Great comments. Thank you, John, Evan, and the whole entire finance and asset management team. As Mayor mentioned, I think it's obvious how much hard work you guys put in this preparation for this budget. Addressing the council priorities, engaging the community from day one, and also very thoughtfully incorporating all of our feedbacks. The memory bank was a great idea, and I go back and review and I saw all of those questions has been responded and addressed. I think your effort to ensure we have alignment with this budget and Bellevue's value is there, from investing in our environment, enhanced human services, public safety, Vision Zero. It is a very, and infrastructure and transportation is all invaluable. As Mayor mentioned, to me, is also a balanced and community-centered budget, especially under a very flat budget that we have. Thanks public for their comments and their inputs. And also thanks this council that is a contingency budget, but we are willing to add that to our budget because there is a need and there were some great ideas came from this council that we saw on the slide. My only question would be, and today we heard from public, at least 10 people, about increase the budget of ESI and environmental. And in the memory bank, you addressed it very well. And you said, as part of the upcoming Sustainable Bellevue Plan update, there would be other way that we can fund this. Can you just maybe elaborate on that more? What would be some of those innovative ways that we can further bolster our environmental efforts?
Some of that, Deputy Mayor, will come through the process of what are the different types of priorities. It's how do we capitalize on some of the state and more localized grant sources? How do we partner in a larger way with the business community and for some of the commercial spacing? From an overall investment standpoint, we then start to look to different kinds of funding sources, like is there property tax that goes towards funding specific outcomes? And as we're starting to try and dig through and understand if there are other funding opportunities, part of that process will give us a chance to look a little more deeply to see if there are different kinds of partnerships that can bring those resources. I can't guarantee what those are today, but we know that that process will give us the chance to look at those based off of what that set of priorities are. And so there might be a balance of different kinds of options. And those will be some of the kinds of investment choices that will be before you as you start to think forward.
Thank you so much. Lastly, the human services, I appreciate all of the budget that city manager and this council, addition to what it was there allocated to that, and I think that's a need that we need to address. Our community is growing and our human services need is growing properly, and we are addressing that. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, thank you. Really thank you and the staff and working with us as well. Your work on this proposed budget has been very exciting and very, I haven't seen us really do this the same way, and I think it's very, very well done. I think it's really enhanced and brought us to an even more professional level of doing this. I mean, we've all done a great chance as we've gone in the past, but this is really good. And you listen to us and to the community. And we've had good conversations back and forth, and that's always very important. I'm really glad to see the community event support funded from one-time council contingency resources, and that's something, again, we know we have those things that come along, and the budget's not just in concrete, it has flexibilities in places and things happen. And again, that is important because I think it's, we had a really good public talking to us tonight, and I know that they understand that we can adjust the budget when circumstances allow in different ways, and this is not something set in concrete, but it's really the foundation. It has everything now, and things will change. So I think we have it set up in a way we can do that probably better than we ever have either. So I think that's very, very important. The other thing I wanted to mention is that, the environmental stewardship on other things that we talked about. Again, we're doing the best we can at this point, and it's not something that's just in stone. So it's really important for the public to understand we're doing the best and we can that makes this really work for the city. And again, thank you for the way you've done that. Could you give me a sense of how much City Hall activation, we've talked about that, activation we might be able to do through the pilot program on the community event support funding?
Yeah, the way we were looking at that currently, we provide for about 5 days on 5 Saturdays a year. This would provide the capacity to take us north of 20 days, perhaps as many as a couple of times a month. So we might be as much as 24 to 26 additional dates, and then maybe a couple of Friday nights in there as well. So it really increases our capacity to really take on what we've heard, which is City Hall is more than just City Hall, but it becomes the living room for so many. And what a great opportunity to find space for the community to utilize this wonderful asset.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It really shows that the city and the people in the city and the people who are serving really are working together on that, and that's a great idea, and I'm glad we can make it in a substantial way. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Newhouse.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll echo my colleagues' comments. Thank you for all the hard work getting us to this point from the city manager's office, and John, you and your team have done a great job getting us to this point. And really want to thank the public for being so engaged. This is not the first meeting, and we really appreciate hearing from so many different aspects of the public as well. Your concerns, your and passions and areas that we need to hear about and continue to look at, if not immediately, but in the future. Fund and maybe fund more robustly than we currently are right now, but really appreciate those that take the time to come down here and speak to the council. Mayor's absolutely right. Kind of a tough budget this time around, a little bit more than usual, and certainly the needs, as you mentioned, John, have gone up, and the requests certainly have gone up. Unfortunately, during a year where we're somewhat flat from a revenue perspective. I share your enthusiasm. The mid-buy hopefully will be robust, and we can take a look at some of those areas where we could not fund more fully like we'd like to right now. I would say the ESI is one of the top ones. I mean, I'm glad that we're throwing a little bit more money at it from the council contingency in terms of the EV infrastructure. What was the other one? The Energize East Side or the Energy Smart East Side incentives. That's great. But one of my frustrations with this process was that ESI piece and the fact that, and City Manager, maybe that's something that we can address next time around, that I think that is an area that this council is very interested in. But unfortunately, during that presentation, we just really didn't have a good understanding of the types of tactics and priorities in order to hit our 2030 goals and our 2050 goals. And until we have that, it's really hard to fund that other than some of the tried and true or the things that we know are going to help and help get us there. You know, that is a presentation I look forward to seeing sooner than later, and that is you know, certainly one of those that bubbles to the top of the list on the mid-buy to see what more we can do to help meet our ESI goals. Really appreciate the comments made about the extended and enhanced bus routes as well. I have heard that comment so often where it takes an hour and 2 transfers in order to make it to another location in Bellevue. We have got to do better either directly from Bellevue or with our partners, with Metro, in order to make that work. It just, without you know, consistent and I would say safe and frequent transit, we're just never going to get more people to look at other routes of getting around this city. So, and that's also good for the environment, but also as we grow, it's critical to offer that type of transportation in our city. Really appreciate Mr. Halverson's comments about public safety. And he's absolutely right. We have not been able to make great inroads in terms of hiring more qualified police officers in this city. Now, we are spending more money on the lateral transfers in terms of signing bonuses. That's great, but we're dealing with a hyper-competitive market right now. I hope that's going to make a difference, but if not, that will be one of the top things that I'll look at the mid-buy. At addressing, because we cannot continue to be 27 officers down, you know, some of that being out of our control, retirements, et cetera, but we are losing a lot of qualified senior public law enforcement in our city, and we need to address that and address that soon, or else that will really impact our city going forward. Really glad that we got some additional farmers market funding in here, that and arts funding. Would still like to make sure that we have Kids Quest funding. I'd like to touch on that a little bit, John, in terms of what's in there for Kids Quest. As much as we all say the arts are so important in our city, I'm very concerned about it with BAM, unfortunately having to close, and it's just something that our city really wants and thrives, and it's an economic development engine for us. You know, we always hear the statistics from our economic development team, how much it adds to the economic engine that is Bellevue, so we need to support them. So would love it if you could touch on that briefly as well. And then, because I can be like a dog with a bone, I am going to also talk about Battalion 102 again tonight, which has been a tremendous add for this community. And we made a commitment, this council, or at least most of this council, to make it whole. So I believe that backfilling, the Battalion 102 shifts when battalion chiefs are off duty is a mutual goal of the city and the IFF, and we acknowledge that there's an MOU in place, and they're establishing those Battalion 102 shifts. And I know that there are several other issues as well that the city and the union are working through at the negotiating table, including this backfilling issue. And I trust that all the parties are going to come together and in the best interest of the city get to a good deal, but and get to the right point for the community. But but we made a commitment, and that means something to me. And I'd like to actually ask the city manager about, if we can't do it now, what will the timing be to work with the union and get this, this resolution? If not now, again, can we commit to a certain time frame, or maybe before or at the mid-buy?
Thank you, Councilmember, for bringing that up. So we are in active negotiations with the union, and this is one of the issues that we are working on. The contract does expire at the end of 2024, and that's the timeline that we are working towards completion. So our schedule would hopefully allow us to get to a complete agreement by the end of the year. Sometimes the negotiations do go past the expiration date. But even in that case, with this contract and where we're at with the negotiations, it would be, we would expect that we would have a final agreement much before the mid-buy, and so we would be able to make that before the mid-buy timeframe comes.
Okay.
So any adjustments that would be needed.
Okay, thank you, City Manager.
Mm-hmm.
And John, or maybe this is a question for the mayor as well, will we have a separate vote on the property tax ordinance for that 1%? Will that be a separate vote, or will that just be part of the overall vote for the budget?
It is contained within the property tax vote. So there is one vote on the property tax and one vote on the banked capacity. So those are two separate, but the vote on the property tax does include the 1% adjustment.
It doesn't, okay. I too really appreciate the memory bank this time around, very helpful going back to look at that time and time again, because a lot of information coming at us. So I really appreciate that. Really appreciate all the folks that came down today too about the extensive needs of the human services throughout the city. I just want them to know that we hear them, but we have to make some tough decisions, unfortunately, and can't fully fund everything. But again, I just want to make sure that they understand that we hear them and appreciate them coming down. So with that, I'll stop my comments there. But again, great job. And I had one question you hadn't answered yet, and I'm trying to remember which one.
Kids Quest.
Yes, thank you.
If I can address that very quickly. The current budget proposal carries carries $10 million for Kids Quest, $5 million in this biennium and $5 million in the next. It is held in reserve because we don't know what that would actually purchase. And this way, due to the size of it, it has to come before you anyways. So we've kept it in that reserve, knowing that there's negotiations to take place and that specific agreement needs to be put in place, and then it would come back before you for any of that actual appropriation and spending of it. So the budget does contain $10 million within the financial plan.
Great. And I really thank my colleagues on their support of the energy capacity needs and gap analysis, which John, you rightly pointed to, which is so big for us going forward as we continue to grow and thrive as a city. We need to make sure we have the power in order to do that. So thank you.
So Councilmember Neuenhuis did a nice job of surgically discussing our support for our firefighters and our first responders. Not everybody's been coached because we're in negotiations doing contracts. I would ask that our other council members maybe not bring that up and just say if they support what Councilmember Neuenhuis brought up or not. Okay, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate my colleagues' work on deploying some of the council contingency fund in support of our constrained and all hands on deck budget. I think it's the right thing to do. Additional human services funding appropriately receives the highest share of those funds. We're supporting the effort to increase the amount of time City Hall is open to provide community members with more opportunities to engage with each other and to have more access to city services. Totally in support of that. We're also committing more resources to EV charging and increasing funding for Energy Smart East Side, which I also support. And as Councilmember Neuenhuis mentioned, the energy capacity needs and gap analysis that he has championed, I'm certainly glad to see that on the list. Just regarding the budget overall, I've said it before, but I think it's worth repeating that community members have provided invaluable feedback, and that feedback has been critically influential in the creation of this budget. My colleagues have invested a lot of time and effort in the creation of the budget as well, and have supported me in my efforts to understand and participate in the process, which I appreciate. And our staff team, under the leadership of our city manager, Carlson, and CFO, Risha, have successfully helped craft a budget that strategically makes the most out of a constrained budget environment that we're in this year. I think it's important to remember that we can't do anything if we don't operate from a stable financial foundation, and I think this budget ensures that we continue to do that moving forward. I'm really impressed with how clever and impactful in this environment that staff and council has been able to be. I think everyone involved in the creation of this budget deserves some time to catch their breath. A little rest for the weary is in order. However, I do think early in the new year, we will have to take a look at how we fund important investments that are not funded in this budget and figure out what we need to do to fund them. I encourage everyone to stay engaged in advocating for our priorities. I think the mid-buy work starts now. We've talked about funding a transportation benefit district, and I look forward to having that conversation in the new year. We have one short year to see what develops to inform our mid-buy budgeting process. Again, great work. Look forward to voting in favor of the final budget on the 19th. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Zahn.
I wish we could fully fund all of the community needs. There are a lot of uncertainties. Councilmember Lee and I are actually at the National League of Cities. And this morning I was in the Federal Advocacy Committee where we learned about potentially some of the interest areas of the new administration. And as we learn more about those priorities and federal programs, both investments that are new as well as potential cutbacks, we'll need to be prepared for that as we look at our mid-buy. So there's lots of uncertainty, and it would be important for us as we adopt our federal advocacy, as we learn more, then to make sure we lift up the most important policies that will help us with some of these gap areas that we have. I would say that in this information we just received, I think it's important for us to use our council contingency when the needs far exceed the budget that we have. So I appreciate the activating City Hall more. That's been something we've talked about for quite a long time, to increase that time, increasing human services, more funding for climate. So those things are really important. With that said, you know, when I think about the amount of work we're trying to do to be more streamlined and efficient and cost savings, we are going to have to do that tough work, as several of you mentioned, about really taking the mid-buy as to work through what are those additional investments and revenue sources that are possible. Because when I think about what we're not able to adequately fund, those are human services, climate action, affordable housing, transit, and Vision Zero. Those are all really important things that it's really hard to make trade-offs because they're all equally important. And when I think about, as well as actually our facilities, so one thing we haven't talked about tonight, and it's in our memory bank, is that we know that our fire levy is not going to be adequate to fund all of the CIP that's needed. So we need to talk about funding for our city facilities as well as we move into this. And what I'm glad about is that I do believe we've been really prudent in keeping a healthy reserve in our budget, as well as being very prudent about taking on debt. So I think those two pieces are very important. I will say that where I'm struggling a little bit is the comment we got from the community, which we did talk about in the memory bank as well, which is how much of the human services funding is going towards culturally specific organizations. And last time we talked about trying to thread a needle through a both and philosophy, that we want to both support our youth and families as well as our culturally specific organizations. So as I think about the fact that the additional $2.8 million, only 6% is going to culturally specific organizations, I do wonder if within our contingency, we can see ourselves adding a little bit more to human services specifically for the culturally specific organizations. If we could even get to 15% to the BIPOC organizations, not to take anything away, but potentially to add or allocate another 200,000 from our council contingency, because one of the things we spoke about going into human services was that sometimes there's resources available, but that our BIPOC community is not as aware of those, and so the culturally specific organizations are really helpful in that space. So that would be the only thing I would suggest that we talk about as a council, is how we really look at the both and in the human services with the additional funding. Thank you.
That's a conversation you want to have tonight, or that's a conversation you hope to have at the mid-buy as we look to increase funding to human services?
Well, the immediate need is now. So what I want to do is have that conversation about whether we can actually allocate some of the unspent or unallocated council contingency for the culturally specific organizations.
Can someone define culturally specific for me? Because I've heard multiple definitions. What is a culturally specific organization? Janice?
Oh, I was actually going to ask the city manager. My understanding is that when the grants come in, there's actually an identifier if they are a culturally specific organization. So perhaps that's something that
But you're
Diane.
referencing it, Councilmember Zahn, so I'm wondering what your definition of a culturally specific organization is. What does that mean? What checks the box for that?
I think we would like to ask Tony Esparza to give a little context in terms of how it was utilized in the Human Services Commission process.
But Councilmember Zahn is advocating for it, so I
Yes.
assume she has an understanding of what she's advocating for.
Yeah, my understanding is that in the human services grants, which is where I do look to Tony to help with that explanation, that within the application, there's an identifier for whether they're providing the culturally specific. So that there is so if we did provide additional funding, it would be clear which organizations those would be. Tony, can you confirm that?
Still aren't defining what culturally specific means, though. So I'll ask Tony to do it, because I guess you cannot.
Sure, absolutely. When the council adopted the strategic plan for human services in February, it did come with definitions of terms, and that is one of the definitions in the plan. Culturally and linguistically specific services are services that are designed for a particular linguistic or cultural community and delivered by individuals from that community.
Okay, so is it the CEO or just the workers, or
Sure, it is not just the CEO, it is the workers. It's that the actual services themselves are designed around the needs of a particular community, and then those services are delivered from people from that same community.
Okay, all right. Is that what you thought, Councilmember Zahn, when
Yes.
you're advocating for this?
Yes, I just didn't want to be incorrect because I didn't have the piece of paper in front of me. So thank you, Tony, for actually reading the definition.
Yes. Okay, so let's put that in the parking lot, and we'll let Councilmember Lee speak first, and then we'll decide whether we are going to address Councilmember Zahn's request for discussion tonight. Councilmember Lee, or are you done, Councilmember Zahn?
Yes, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Lee, you're muted. I still can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. I want to thank John for his transparency, for his process. And I want to thank the Diane for working with him to have a very transparent process. Even though, what we are working with for the city council is a small piece of the whole budget. But I understand that, this allows us to really dig into a very important piece of the pie because we can be creative, we can be innovative, and we can actually dig into it to work on something that is, very creative to allow us to see the perspective, to understand, spend time to do something that really makes a lot of sense. This is a good way for us to uh, study, understand, and come up with all the things that we are able to discuss. I like that a lot. It's not just very superficial, say, well, we do this and that. And we have a very good process. So I think this allows us have this robust discussion. And we are having memory bank, and now we are very satisfied, even though we're not getting everything we want, but now we're getting real a good emphasis. And we are even having a potential retreat discussion. We are maybe having the mid-buy. So I think we're going to do a good job. One thing though, however, I think that we want to be sure city council members have a opportunity to have early involvement in the discussion, because I believe the council members have the opportunity to help in getting a deeper involvement, because we have been in so many ways have the experience to discuss some of the things that are on the table, because some of the things that we've been working with for many years, we have different ideas, different perspectives, and we've been thinking about it for some time. So if we were aware of the things early on, we can bring to the table, and we probably can save some time and have the opportunity to help to do the conversation. So instead of just getting toward tail end, we could be bringing to the table earlier. So I think that can help. So I would request in the future, it's a good process, but I think it would be useful if we are involved earlier. Another thing that I would think that would be useful is we also, can help in the process, because whatever we decide depends on the funding, because we depend on the situation, how we approach it. For example, we are asking, can this be done? Will the funding be available? Who would be the partners? We have been involved with, from our involvement in the city, in the elected office, we have been involved with federal government. For example, we've been involved with the NLC. We're now in NLC. I've been involved many years. It's a federal government, and I personally have been involved with. I was appointed the SBA regional administrator, and regionally, we have been involved with the King County regional positions, and we have been involved with the regional government, PSRC, and we've been involved with SCA, AWC. So we do have personal relationships which we can bring to the table. So we have a perspective which we can bring to the staff. So this is a benefit of looking at what things that we've been doing, what advantages we have, what resources may be available. Then we have a congressional delegation also that can bring to the table. So I think it is helpful. Same thing with bringing the community to the table because we know where the resources are. So I believe that if we can be involved in these ventures or these projects, we become valuable partners. Another thing that we are involved is we bring bipartisanship to the table. So I believe that these things could help in our determination of our project. For example, this time we're NLC. One of the projects we talked about is the Cross Culture Center. We were invited by NLC. We have staff present. We're invited to the table, and we presented the Cross Culture Center project. It was very well received, and people asked lots of questions because at this time we know how divided this country is, how polarized, and they're all wondering what can we do to make the country, make the people more united. So this is the kind of thing that we can actually provide a benefit. And if we provide benefit to our elected officials, we can also at the same time receive support from our counterparts throughout the country. So I think this is the things that we really can work together. So right close to the city we're talking about, I like what some of us we've been looking at. Some of the things that people are asking. ESI is one. We have goals. We have very good questions that are being asking by the people we'll be talking to. We talk about very important goals. How we talk about how many emission we want to reduce by 2050, but we lack specific goals. We lack specific actions. We lack specific money, budget, the set, and then we can figure out how can we accomplish those goals. So it's very challenging if we don't have those concrete goals based on specific matrix. So we need to make those commitments. So I think this is something that we need to do. Similarly, with economic development, we have lots of wonderful goals we set, but we have plans. We said we have a plan to do this. But what are the goals? What are the matrix? What are the concrete expectations? I think those things, some of the things we need to make sure we set. So this is some challenges we are not doing. So I like to turn some of the things, specifically the mechanism that has to be included in our budget consideration. So another thing I support, public safety is another one. We are talking about technology. We should use drones to make public safety more effective, to save the officers, to make it easier for them to enforce the laws, make it safer, make it easier for the officers to make sure that when they go out on calls, they know the situation without risking their life, knowing the situation before they get there. And the same thing applies to firefighters. They have situation assessed. We have this technology available. We know they have. We have a drone company located in Seattle, and they are talking to Redmond, but they're talking to Bellevue. I said, how come? Well, Bellevue don't have the money. We're not providing money for them. So that's not good. So we need to do those things. So I think we need to help our public safety. Everybody agrees is number one. So I also agree with Jared, that we need to make sure, we need to value, we need to support our fire department. So I think we need to continue to put the fire safety, police safety, safety of our citizens as number one. I so anyway, I think that's what mostly I want to say, and I believe that I'm glad also because the process we're going through this time, as I mentioned when I started, it's a great, wonderful budget process. I really think it's worked very well, and I believe that uh, some of the things we haven't got it done. I have the faith, I have the assurance that we should be able to discuss it as we go through the mid-buy and as we see what the financial situation looks like. And as we go through the other process, federal government, local government, we have and how economy looks like, and also the other sources of money, and talk to our partners, and we have this. If the economy looks good, our private sectors, these are all potentially people that can help us. So I'm very optimistic, and I hope that the council members can all work together and look at these all opportunities and don't
Okay.
give up.
Thank
Keep
you,
going.
Councilmember Lee. Listen, why don't you mute yourself? And I think maybe your TV's on in the background or something, because there's something background noise coming over your mic. So thank you for your input. So I'm just going to say that we have never pre-spent our council contingency before. This is the first time that I've been on the council that we've done this. And we've done it because it is a flat year. There are increased needs that we are not able to address. And we've had a lot of discussions about how we wanted to use next year's contingency. In response to our discussions, the city manager added $2.5 million to this Human Service Fund, which is quite remarkable. That's a lot of money that we've never been able to add before. One time. And then through the council contingency, we've added 290,000, I believe, one-time funding. And that leaves us with $105,000 left over, but we don't know what 2025 is going to bring. If we spend that tonight, we're not going to have any council contingency for any emerging needs next year. So I personally am content with leaving things the way they are. I will also remind you, Councilmember Zahn, that when we got the additional funding, my ask was youth and family services, and your and was housing stability and homelessness. So you already got your and in there at that time. So this is another ask in addition to that. I think that I've heard what Councilmember Zahn has talked about with the human service funding. We've heard that from the community as well. Councilmember Lee's talking about the cultural center, economic development, and public safety for fire, police, and our residents. So these are all things that I would really like to carry over into our retreat, which we're having at the end of January. We can discuss how we are going to address those things, potentially at the mid-buy, or however we want to do it at that time. So are we okay with that idea? And let me ask, can I get a head nod? Yes, Councilmember Neuenhuis.
Thank you. Regarding the cross-cultural center, remind me again, John, what's in the budget for it currently? Again?
In the budget, it contains $100,000, which is for our site analysis for city, other public, and other sites where it might be able to be built. There's enough in there to take that next step.
Okay.
We think as part of the mid-buy or the next biennium, that will identify the path and the opportunities for you to have some more deliberation on what next sets of investments.
What next steps, including budgetary steps. Okay, thank
Absolutely.
you. Okay.
So is the dais comfortable with, yes, Councilmember Hamilton.
Great, thank you. I have a question. So if we don't have a council contingency fund, what options are available to us if we felt the need to cover some unknown expense?
John can add to this, but it would be looking to reserves primarily. Correct, John?
That is correct. There are two technical approaches. One would be to go to reserves, and each of the dollars have specific things associated with them. And there are some options there. The other is to defund other services in order to fund an emerging priority. I have not heard any interest in that approach. And so I think that would be if it was something that significant. Now, I will also share with you and remind you that you do have, we have as a city, a pretty substantial and appropriate level of reserve for emergencies. And that basic reserve, that 15%, is in the case of catastrophic. So we maintain that for emergencies. And I think what I hear you talking about is for emerging issues, which are things that might come up along the way.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. Yeah, thank you. I'm glad we're deploying it, so I'm interested in the conversation. What my concern is that we've had this contingency fund in place and have not used it for at least 3 years. And so I think, deploying these funds strategically, putting them to use in our current budget environment, I think is certainly a discussion worth having. I would be open to considering, deploying some of this additional money. Though I am concerned it takes a little bit more of a conversation. I would like to get some feedback from you, John, and from Diane and Tony, just to have some additional assurance that, this would be money well spent. It certainly would be, but is it something that, we really want to do? And I think without having, some of that feedback, just be a little hard pressed, though. In general, I like the idea, and I'm not really in favor of holding on to money. I'd like to put it to use, and I think especially now. But without some of that feedback, I'm concerned about what does come next year and what we may need that money for.
I think he's asking for response.
Councilmember, you always have the prerogative to provide direction and will execute on that direction. Our current process does take time where you do take action to direct us to identify how to invest additional funds. It would take some time to go back and look at the recommendation process. The team would go back and look at what are those next things in that space, see how it squares against some of the other investment recommendations that you've provided to us in order to bring that together. I might be a little bit concerned that legislation might not be ready by Thursday, which is when it has to be in the packet for your consideration for next week's meeting. So we could have a little bit of a timing challenge. But there's also not an obligation that you have to act on that legislation by next meeting. You could give direction, and we could have time to develop that should that be needed. The dollars are sitting within your contingency, and that is your prerogative as a council to direct that. And they aren't going away, and so they aren't being given to some other particular use. So there would be time and opportunity to explore that. I'm just a little bit nervous about a 2-day turnaround on that kind of a change, and I would not want to get this wrong.
And I'm honestly concerned about pre-committing money like that when that's all we have left. We have we don't normally spend before the year. We spend during the year. But I understand you don't want to leave it on the table. Councilmember Stokes, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, well, I essentially agree with the comments that Councilmember Hamilton, but my interpretation was he's not saying, can we have it tomorrow? It's like, at some point, instead of waiting, maybe 3 years or something for it, there are times when we could, if necessary. And it's something to think about, and there are processes to go through. And that's, I think, what we're trying to figure out is what options do we have, because things will change before we know it. and we're in a national situation where we don't know what in the heck's going to happen on a lot of things. So, yeah, is that correct?
I think, yes, after this discussion, that is where I'm at.
And I
may
think
not have
it's
been clear
good.
about that.
Yeah.
I think
I'm
it's good
happy with what we're
retreat
doing.
conversation.
Yeah, I think to change it at this point, unfortunately, just isn't a good idea, just so. But otherwise, yeah, I appreciate Councilmember Zahn bringing it up and having the chance to talk about it. And I certainly think that deploying this money now is the right thing, but at the current amount that we've discussed.
Did we lose Councilmember Lee? Is he still there?
Turned his camera off.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see anything. Councilmember Zahn, you have your hand up?
Yes, I wanted to join this conversation because to Councilmember Hamilton's point, in terms of allocating funds, even when we vote to allocate these funds, they're not going to go away in day one. So along the way, if we find that we have some financial challenges, we can still make some choices about these pieces that are in the additional budget. And I think the other one that I'm curious about is when you talked about the reserve. So are we carrying a current reserve of 15%, or is it actually more than that?
Our operating reserve for the city is carried at 15% of the ongoing operations of the general fund. And it has historically been at that level, and it continues to be at that level.
Yeah,
Okay.
But council member, there are additional reserves for those specific outlined uses that are included in the financial plan, which include housing, municipal, fire, parks, et cetera, arts as well. So there's the operating reserve that John just mentioned, but there are those named kind of earmarked reserves above and beyond that.
Okay, so I guess my point is along the way, there is a potential to make adjustments to the budget. And so this isn't one of those where if we made the choice tonight to allocate a small amount of additional towards the culturally specific human services, that there aren't some other adjustments that could be made next year if we find ourselves in a financial situation that something needs to be adjusted.
Like if we give the FAR this and that, it's going to be really build up this much affordable housing. This is just ask. I keep asking.
Councilmember Lee, can you mute yourself, please?
Somebody, I'm not allowed to speak.
Well, you'll get your chance in a minute. Councilmember Zahn is finishing up right now.
Okay.
So Councilmember Zahn is asking that if we budget for a certain amount of money for certain things, if that's fluid, like next year, we can just change it around. You know, I'm just going to say, one thing that we have not done as a council is we've never at 3/4 of the year through sat down and said, hey, we haven't spent that money yet. What could we do with it? And I think that that's been lacking, and something that we would probably all appreciate the chance to do. Councilmember Zahn, I would really appreciate if we could have that conversation at a retreat in January and see if we want to spend more of our contingency at that time so that we can have a robust conversation and understand the implications.
I understand. I just think it's important to have this conversation because the community is struggling today, and I appreciate having this conversation.
Well, that's what we're asking to have at the retreat when we have all the staff there and we can focus on that. And I think that would be important to do. So I know City Manager, go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, thanks. I was just going to add a little bit. We did hear from most of the council members this interest in taking a look at the contingency and some of these many additional needs that we have struggled with and you've struggled with over the last couple months. So we would like to have continued conversation with you throughout the year, and I will agree that it would be probably better for us to hold where we're at today, but make sure that we bring that conversation to you so that you can have a more robust discussion about it.
And to be honest, the council contingency that's left over is only $105,000. We need far more than that for our human services, and that's a conversation we need to have at the retreat. How are we going to raise more revenue for things that we know that we're short? And it's not just human services, it's everything that everybody's brought up tonight. And you listed it so well yourself, council members on. So that's the conversation we need to sit down and talk about the different ways we can generate revenue for the different pieces of the puzzle.
I look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Okay, so may I have a motion? Oh, sorry. You know what? I didn't call on Councilmember Lee. Councilmember Lee, sorry.
I cannot.
Councilmember Lee, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
I cannot speak. I unmute.
I heard that. I think you're okay. Go ahead and speak.
You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I don't know why I'm not allowed to speak. I'm not asking for more money. I'm talking about Cross Culture Center, the money that's provided. That's all. I just want to clarify what the money is going to be spent on.
Okay.
There's no question. There's no.
Did you get your
controversy.
answer? Did you hear staff's response?
No, I'm not here.
Okay,
I talked to Diane about it.
Councilmember Newenhouse asked that exact question, so.
Well, I did not hear.
Okay,
No.
we're going to get a response again. Go ahead,
Okay,
John.
I want to hear what that is.
Here we go.
Councilmember Lee.
Diane.
I can also answer that. Thank you, Councilmember Lee. Yes, so the $100,000, which thank you for working with us on that. Those funds would be used for site analysis for future cross-cultural center, and that would be potentially on city properties or other public properties or potential other options. But it would definitely move the work forward for potential siting.
Okay, all right. So when you say potential options, what does that mean?
That means we will take a look at what options were identified in the previous studies, but also potential additional options for a site location.
Okay, that's it.
All right, thank you,
Okay.
Councilmember Lee. So may I get a motion?
I move to direct staff to return on November 19, 2024 with appropriate legislations to adopt the final budget, including any adjustments to the preliminary budgets.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, great. Thank you so much. We're going to take a quick 5-minute break here, and we'll be back at 9 o'clock for our next study session item.
Great job, guys.
Okay, this is our second of 2 study session items. City Manager, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Mayor, council members. So Bellevue's affordable housing strategy has provided a very good and thoughtful roadmap for the city for actions to help encourage and support affordable housing throughout Bellevue. And it has been oftentimes held up as a model approach to this. So tonight, staff is here to share a little bit of the results of our 2017 strategy and also highlight the work that's continuing to be underway. And looking forward to updating the plan, they will highlight the proposed outcomes, focus, and process for that work. After the presentation, staff is looking for council to consider directing the staff to initiate the update process. And joining from our Community Development Department, we have Tara Johnson and Hannah Bonmiller, Senior Affordable Housing Planner. Tara is our Planning Director. And then we are joined by a third staff person that I'll ask Tara to introduce. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. I'm joined this evening with Hannah Bonmiller, who has presented before you. We also have Linda Abe, who's, I believe, presented before you as well. She's the Affordable Housing Planning Manager. So to kick things off, just wanted to provide some initial comments. And then as City Manager Carlson mentioned, we have a update on the progress we've made, as well as we'll dive into the scope of work for the Affordable Housing Strategy update. So a little bit of context, as you may recall, Council adopted the existing Affordable Housing Strategy in 2017. It includes 5 overarching strategies and 21 actions to expand affordable housing opportunities. In addition, Council also approved Next Right Work set of actions in 2022, and we've made considerable progress with both the actions within the Affordable Housing Strategy as well as Next Right Work actions, and so now we're really looking at the next phase of work before us. So as part of tonight's presentation, we're requesting Council to consider providing staff with the direction to initiate an update to the Affordable Housing Strategy, which will also include recommendations on the next set of actions for our next timeframe, which is we're looking at the 26 to 2030 timeframe. So as part of our discussion tonight, we'll start off with an overview on the successes under the existing strategy. We'll talk about some of the metrics, and then we'll talk about some of the previous discussions you've had alongside setting an affordable housing target that happened earlier this year, and then we'll really focus on the scope and approach for the strategy. With that, I'm going to pass things on to Linda, who's going to provide us with an overview on the successes we've had with the strategy.
Okay, thank you, Tara. So we usually always present a report to the council on a biannual basis, but tonight anyway, we're going to keep the report a little brief because we want to spend more time and focus on the work to launch the Affordable Housing Update. So I just want to quickly go over how we track data to measure implementation success. So we reported at the last council update in April that we had effectively met and would exceed the original target of creating or preserving 2,500 affordable units ahead of schedule. As of October 1st, there was a total of 3,000 in-service and pipeline affordable units. And I also want to point out that of the 2,270 in-service units, that 44% of those are from new construction and 56% of those are from preservation. So what we're seeing in this is that in the 7 years of implementation between 2017 and 2024, the Affordable Housing Strategy has increased Bellevue's affordable housing inventory by over 73%. This milestone reflects the impact of the affordable housing actions implemented to date, along with the unwavering support from Council to prioritize affordable housing opportunities in our community. Let's look at some of those impacts. So staff have been working to quantify the impacts of implementing the Affordable Housing Strategy, and a full summary is included in the agenda packet, but here are some of the highlights. The multifamily tax exemption program has produced 336 affordable units in 9 different market rate housing developments since the program was updated. City investments of $27.5 million through our affordable housing programs has resulted in 607 new or preserved units. These funding programs include the Housing Stability Program, plus contributions to Arches Housing Trust Fund. In addition, the Affordable Housing Strategy has attracted $540 million in private investment. Of that, an estimated $270 million of capital investment across 12 different affordable housing projects were funded by philanthropic corporate entities and or using state funding programs such as the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit Program. In terms of successes this year, 6 projects have have or will be opening their doors for occupancy before the end of this year. These 6 projects reflect a diversity of project types and have been within the development pipeline for various lengths of time. We rarely get to actually see projects open up every year, so it's pretty amazing that 6 projects are actually opening up in the same year. Because of this progression through the pipeline into opening, this has resulted in over 600 affordable units being made available to our community in this year alone. The last 3 of the 6 projects opening are all market rate apartment developments. This illustrates the impact of the multifamily tax exemption and incentive programs have on producing affordable housing units from market rate housing developments, which is important during a tight budget year. It is also worth noting that all 6 of the projects opening this year are located in different Bellevue neighborhoods. 2 are in downtown Bellevue, 3 are in the Belridge district, and the fully leased Polaris affordable housing project is in the Eastgate area. As we celebrate the implementation successes of the affordable housing strategy, we need to press into our affordable housing work. We have a significant queue of ongoing and upcoming affordable housing work happening across departments and teams. I'll highlight a couple of them. The C1 program, we have 4 projects we have 4 churches that are actually moving forward with the C1 program to implement affordable housing on their properties. And the affordable housing team is leading development of affordable housing on 2 city-owned properties in Wilburton, one in Wilburton and one in the Belridge area. So this work and more will continue while we are working to update the strategy. So I will now turn it over to Hannah, and she will present the affordable housing strategy update.
These successful implementation efforts that Linda covered have brought us to the point where we see significant value in doing a major update to the affordable housing strategy. As Tara indicated, we did a minor update with the Next Right Work, but we are really at a time where there is value in doing a full update to the actions for the next 7 years. The strategy is a short-term action plan, and its goal is to identify and sequence steps into an implementation plan that will help the city address our continuing affordable housing needs in the community. And updating this strategy will help us identify both near and midterm actions that the city can take to help us achieve the new affordable housing target and meet our other housing priorities. So what is the value in doing a major update now? We have several predicating factors. As Linda spoke to, we've implemented the majority of the 2017 Affordable Housing Strategy and Next Right Work actions. And we've also effectively met the goal of producing or preserving 2,500 affordable units in 10 years. This accomplishment led to the development of a new starting point target, which Council gave direction on in May. Additionally, the city has new policy guidance on housing from the recent adoption of the Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update. There were major changes to the housing element and new state and regional requirements around affordable housing and housing planning. We also see alignment with this work and the Council's strategic target areas and Council priorities. The 24-26 Council priorities actually call out updating the affordable housing strategy and the affordable housing target, and call out a focus on implementing high priority actions. Lastly, we want to call back to the presentation you just had. Within the 25-26 preliminary budget, there are new investments with many opportunities that the affordable housing strategy can be a tool to mobilize and leverage. So the primary objective of the affordable housing strategy is to develop these next set actions to help the city achieve our target and to sequence those actions into a 7-year implementation and monitoring plan. As part of this process, we will be evaluating our progress to implement our past work, as well as analyzing the potential impacts of new actions. Additionally, this update provides a unique opportunity around community education. We know that fostering and informed community members through educational opportunities and having clear and accessible project materials can help increase our community's capacity and interest in participating in discussions on affordable housing. A starting point affordable housing target was presented to Council in May, and Council gave direction that affirmed the target as a starting point and directed staff to further engage with technical stakeholders. As a reminder, the starting point target is on the screen here, and it looks at affordable housing that is income restricted to those making less than 80% of the area median income adjusted for household size. This methodology is based on an analysis that was conducted as part of the 2022 Bellevue Housing Needs Assessment and is also based on the city's 25-year housing growth target of 35,000 housing units. Based on Council's direction in May, we further engaged with technical stakeholders to vet the starting point target. We engaged with stakeholder groups and held a focus group and gained invaluable feedback that we built into the scoping process. Staff are proposing that we use the starting point target of 5,700 affordable housing units and the income sub-targets as the structure to guide the development of this affordable housing strategy update. And we propose that we'll continue to engage with stakeholders throughout this process to continue to refine that approach. We know that contextualizing this starting point target is key to understanding what it will take to achieve it. This slide shows the order of magnitude between where we are and where we will need to be in order to achieve that starting point target. And you can see this is not only an ambitious goal, it is quite aggressive. We will need to about double our affordable housing, our average annual production of affordable units over what we have produced in the last 7 years as an annual average. And you see that this is even more significant for units that are affordable to under 50% of the area median income, where there are significant needs. And historically, these have been difficult units to bring online and to maintain successful operations. And while we want to call out that we know we have new tools we didn't have for the entirety of the last 7 years, notably the Housing Stability Program. But even with these tools that we have in place now, we still do anticipate notable gaps in the under 50% AMI category, and even with those funds fully deployed. And so it is evident that we need new and improved tools, as well as more funding, both local and otherwise, to meet this new starting point target. So that is the context of why and towards what goal we are launching this update. In this next section, I'll speak briefly to some more detail on the scope and how we plan to approach this work. So first, I want to call out 3 core elements of this work. The first is that we know we're not doing this update in a vacuum. We have significant successful implementation efforts to build on with the 2017 Affordable Housing Strategy, with Next Right work, and other planning and community engagement. And so part of our pre-launch work that Linda called out was our work to look back and document our implementation efforts, as well as quantify the impact of what we've been able to achieve from that implementation. We've also identified and summarized past housing-related engagement to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts with the community. Another key element of this work is going to be operationalizing and implementing our policy guidance within the newly adopted Comprehensive Plan Periodic Update, as well as other policy and analytical work. There were significant new state and regional guidance that informed the housing element, and many of the new policies need to be implemented through actions. So part of this process will be to identify the policies that need actionizing and then to develop specific implementation steps within the strategy. Finally, this project is dedicated to both engaging the public at large as well as those voices representative of those most impacted by housing issues and those from marginalized and underserved communities. This is important because there is a legacy of disproportionate and disparate impacts within housing outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit more about our community engagement approach in a subsequent slide. In terms of the project process, this work has been divided into 4 post-launch phases that anticipate to occur over the course of the next year. So this is to launch the plan, to assess it, to refine it, and adopt it. You'll see on the screen that we do plan to engage council regularly throughout the process, including a mid and end point council briefing before bringing the strategy update to you all for action. This strategy does not go through a recommendation process with the Planning Commission. It is not formally recommended by them, but we do plan to brief and engage relevant city boards and commissions throughout this process so they stay apprised of this work. So as we mentioned, the update will prioritize actions that focus on increasing the availability of income-restricted affordable housing, but it is also going to include actions that increase housing access and stability and increase the overall affordability of the housing market. And so while we're going to be conducting more work over the course of this next year to identify and define focus areas, we also have a significant foundation of policy guidance and community engagement that we can draw from to identify where we anticipate those focus areas to be, which you'll see on the screen. We've generally categorized these into deepest affordability, unique and other needs, centering equity, and overarching concepts. So these are things that we think will be further fleshed out within the plan. One important call out that isn't listed on the screen that we wanted to note was the importance of preservation as a tool. Linda mentioned that many of our over half of our in-service units that we brought on in the last 7 years are from preservation. And so we know this is going to be an important tool to make sure that we're making progress towards this new starting point target. Lastly, we just want to talk about our approach to community engagement. We've done a lot of community engagement through the comprehensive planning process. And so we have a lot to build on, but we also know this is one of the top community issues. And so we plan to take some of the new policy guidance from the comprehensive plan periodic update and use that to inform our community engagement strategy to ensure that we're doing it successfully. And so we know that as we're undertaking ambitious housing goals, that having a solid approach to engagement is important. Community members and other constituents need to be educated, engaged, and invested in being part of this solution to ensure the successful development of the plan and its implementation. And so to that end, we have 3 overarching engagement objectives for the plan. First is to provide information on affordable housing. Everyone comes to this topic with their own knowledge and experience, and we want to make sure that we provide a foundation of information so that interested in community members can engage in public dialogue. We also want to create opportunities for folks to inform the strategy. There are a wide variety of interested parties on the topic of affordable housing, and we'll be working to provide a range of opportunities so everyone's voices can be heard, and to ensure that the update is informed by that broad participation. And finally, we recognize the need to elevate voices not heard, those with limited resources, and those with other barriers to participation. Part of this engagement strategy aims to intentionally engage those marginalized and underserved in the affordable housing strategy recommendation process. So we are very excited to undertake this body of work as an affordable housing team, and I'll pass back to Tara to close us out.
Thank you, Hannah. So that concludes our presentation, and as we said earlier, we're here to ask council to consider providing direction to initiate work on the affordable housing strategy update.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Deputy Mayor, why don't you start off with the motion?
I move to direct staff to initiate an update to the affordable housing strategy to develop the next set of affordable housing actions for the 2026-2032 timeframe.
Okay, so is Councilmember Lee still on? I don't see him, but maybe he's still there.
He is still on. He has declined being a panelist at this point. So
Okay.
Councilmember Lee, if you can hear me, I'm sending you prompts to promote you to a panelist so you can turn your video on and unmute.
Why don't we start with Councilmember Zahn?
Yes, thank you. It's 12:30 in the morning, so we
Oh,
might be a little
geez.
bit rummy.
Unmute.
Okay.
Okay,
Well, why
I'm
don't we
here.
let Councilmember Lee go first? Go ahead, Councilmember Lee.
That's okay. I'm reading all the transcripts, so I've been taking some notes. I passed. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Lee. Go ahead, Councilmember Zahn.
Okay, thank you. Well, first of all, great news on the 6 affordable housing units that's opening this year. That's amazing. And I think it's a testament to the tough work of the staff in the community and the developers making that happen. So really, really excited about that. Great that we met our original target over 10, actually in the last 7 years. So I agree with the staff recommendation that instead of coming up with the next 10-year plan, to go with a 7-year, because that's about the third point of a 20-year comp plan. So we can get a look at 7 years to see how we're at. So I like that. In particular, I really like the information that you've presented so far. I think it is based on partners. I'm hoping we can really double down on the C1 and additional funders. I thought I saw in there that we have both focusing on rentals as well as home ownership, so thank you for that. I think it'll also be important for us to look at TOD and in particular that the TIFIA loan is actually allowed to be used for housing in adjacent to transit. So I think that that should be a strategy that we potentially look at. And then I'd like to recommend that as we get more aggressive to these goals, having a partnership with the school district, because I think that affordable housing is important for our families and the staff that work in the district as well. The other one I just want to bring up is that the National League of Cities has a housing supply accelerator playbook that was recently published and would be available as looking at some new tools that other cities might be looking at. So I'd like to recommend that as we do this work, we take a look at that. And then 2 more points. One is when we talk about community engagement, I'm thinking about the fact that we have the environmental stewardship plan update, the diversity advantage plan update, now the affordable housing update, neighborhood subarea planning. Are we looking at doing some shared outreach so that as we do outreach in one of these areas that we're also talking about these other pieces as well? And then when I look at the engagement table that's in the attachment, I didn't see community-based organizations, kind of cultural navigators as part of that. So I wonder if, as you take a look at that engagement table, which column they should be included in, because I do think it's important to include them. And then lastly, in the focus area, I really like the universal design. I don't see anything about sustainable design. And certainly that might be one where we have some slightly higher initial first costs, but from a sustainability and energy use standpoint, they become more affordable for the people that are living in those units. So I wonder if that's one of the things that should be included in the focus areas. Anyway, that's what I've got. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, and really,
Before we do that, can you respond to the sustainable design? Is that one that could be added in the focus area? That was a question, sorry.
Certainly. Thank you, Councilmember Zahn, and I can also respond to your question on the outreach as well. So I can respond to both of those. That is certainly something we can take a look at as we're reviewing the scope. We are working very closely with the other initiatives. So, and as you just mentioned, the ESI plan update is ongoing. Of course, the affordable housing strategy. and other work, neighborhood area planning. And so we really are looking for opportunities where we can collaborate with outreach, to provide opportunities for the community so that the community is also not overwhelmed with various touch points, and then they kind of get a cohesive idea of what our various initiatives are within the city and how they relate to each other. And then with the CBOs and COAs, they are certainly an integral part of our outreach strategy. For the update, we provided a summary because our engagement strategy is fairly extensive and detailed. Wanted to provide a summary for council, and so the COAs, cultural outreach assistants are certainly, as well as the CBOs are certainly part of our strategy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Councilmember Stokes.
Yeah, I'm really actually very excited to be here and see where we are. I'm really glad of this community, of the presentation, and helpful to see not only where we've headed, but also how far we've really come. And on that note, I do want to point out, and I'm really excited about this, that in 2016-17, we were working on this, and I was the mayor. Lynn was, Mayor Robinson was a council member at the time, and we had this Highland Village group, mostly Hispanic, about 80 families. You know, really, it was a place that really needed to be redone for something else. But we got together, the community, the police department, fire department, people, just everybody together on this thing. And we looked at this, and from the beginning, we kind of talked about doing plans. And we agreed. I said, we need a strategy. That's what we go. We take the strategy, and then we do the plans and stuff like that. And we don't just put it on the shelf. So that was a very, the fundamental place where this came from. We really, at that point, said, we are going to do this. And what's amazing is we actually did, and we're still going much, much further. So that was a real success, and it's really exciting to get out there and do something like this, but it's because we all worked together. The staffing work was great. We got the money put into it. We got lots of organizations, and that was when Bellevue stepped up and said, we're going to do this. And other members and all that were there, all the council members and all really got behind this, and we're doing it now. So I think that's just amazing, and I'm really excited about where you're taking us on this. I noticed that there was a note about some changes to the sales tax incentives and MFTE programs, and can you tell us a little bit about that? How that's going to affect this or help this?
Hannah, do you want to address that?
So we've identified some pre-strategy adoption opportunities next year to advance some changes to the multifamily tax exemption program that are new options available under the state statute. So there are some new options that have not yet been incorporated into our local code that we'd like to consider and advance to council for your consideration to improve and expand the multifamily tax exemption program. Similarly, there are two new tax incentives that the state legislature has established relating to, I believe, commercial properties and vacant and underutilized parking lots, and we'd like to explore those as work items for next year. So as Linda spoke to, we would like to continue some of these items that are in the queue on our plate as we still develop the update.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. This is really great, and I'm really excited about it, and I know we're going to really keep going forward. And I think Lynn had some questions or proposals at the time of looking at, different schools or, churches, and where they're kind of quasi-public things that are there, and, they're changing everything, and we really got involved in that. It takes some time, but again, y'all have done a great job of following through on that whole thing and putting it together. So I think we're going to get our goals and above that. So appreciate very much.
Yeah, I think the Office of Affordable Housing is who will be dealing with those surplus properties.
Right, that was a good idea to do that too. Yeah.
Thank you, Diane. Let's see, Councilmember Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. Certainly appreciate my colleagues' comments. So Councilmember Zahn, certainly agree with what she had to say, and appreciate the MFTE question having come up. And thanks for the report. It is good to see some good news. 600 new affordable housing units coming on board this year. That's great. Of course, we've got tons more work to do, but I think these numbers are really encouraging. Appreciate the engagement work that has gone on so far, and I think a couple of pieces from this technical stakeholder, from the technical stakeholders are worth emphasizing. Commitments and transparency are key to this process. The city should be honest and clear about needs, gaps, and impacts, and also that opportunities exist around public information campaigns and engaging and hearing from less prominent voices. I'm glad we're focused on the range of them, but those in particular. I just think, too, when we're talking about goals, it's important to have stretch goals, but our goals have to be reasonably achievable. I think the community expects that we will reach our goals. And I'm sure we all agree how important it is to meet the expectations that we set for ourselves. So we definitely need stretch goals for affordable housing because there is so much work to do. But I also want to be sure that we keep the energy and enthusiasm high by setting reasonable expectations. And I want to make sure, too, that we maintain that same high level of engagement with housing suppliers when we implement the updated strategy. Housing suppliers will be investing time and effort right alongside us as we carry out the important mission of building the housing we desperately need. So we will need a high level of engagement to complete the update to affordable housing, but the strategy, once updated, needs to ensure a high level of engagement that will be required to meet the goals. Just one question for you. I know you're going to be coming back and presenting to us. I assume that we'll have some briefings before you come back to us? Is that the case? And if not, can we schedule some briefings so that we have a little bit more kind of concentrated time?
Certainly, we can look at that.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. Thank you. Great work.
Councilmember Nieuwenhuis.
Thank you, Mayor. Great comment so far, and I appreciate Councilmember Stokes as well as Mayor Robinson's leadership on this before we were on the council. Of course, Councilmember Lee as well, but I can't count that far back. This is a great time to be updating our strategy, so fully in support of that. Just and a couple of quick questions, especially as Councilmember Hamilton mentions about our targets, but these targets that we have on here are not really our targets, are they? Tara, these are the targets that came out of negotiations with King County and the Growth Management Act, correct?
So the targets that you're speaking to, the regional targets,
Yep.
Which we went through that Growth Management Planning Council process, those are actually expressed as capacity.
Right.
And so those are different from these. These are based on the city's housing needs assessment,
Okay.
that work that occurred in 2022.
Okay.
And so that's based on Bellevue's need and the gap analysis that we did tied to that housing needs assessment.
Tied to that housing need? Okay, so what was the difference then between King County and our housing needs?
There's a pretty substantive difference. The other large difference is that this is a 10-year horizon,
Yeah.
and then the other is a 20-year horizon.
So the 0 to 30% AMI for the 2,700 units, which would have to be heavily subsidized, to what tune would that need to be subsidized? 2,700 units, roughly.
I mean, what we're hearing is pretty much anything within the 0 to 50% AMI would need additional subsidy, both federal and state subsidy.
Right. To what amount?
To what extent? Do you have an estimate?
I believe that based on a probably conservative estimate of the cost to build a 0 to 30 unit, that the 2,700 would cost approximately $2 billion. But I will say that doesn't account for that wouldn't be our local investment. That would include dollars that we would seek to leverage from
Yep.
state, federal, and other sources as well.
Yep.
Part of this process will be doing some wedge analysis to see what tools and what impact we will get from those tools. And so I believe we can have some better estimates as we go through this process to share with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just want to be realistic in terms of the heavy lift will be required in order to really make this target a reality. Is the heavy lifting that we're going to have to do in terms of subsidizing these types of units. Just so I'm clear, so this group right here, or this strategy would live under the Office of Housing, correct? Or, as the mayor said, affordable housing, but I heard it was just going to be Office of Housing. Can you clarify, City Manager?
Sorry, my fault.
No, that's, I'm just clarifying.
That's okay, we're still working that out. And
Okay.
that's part of what the work over the next year would do, is to help define. But we do see it as more of a combined set of work between community development and the Office of Housing. So I think you'll see them together in a lot of cases, kind of working on this with some distinct responsibilities that will work out through the next year.
Okay. Okay. And that will come back before the council when those distinct.
Yes.
Okay, great. But yeah, there's a lot of great work to build on here. So, and I appreciate you highlighting all the successes that we have had and that we are going to far surpass that original goal. In terms of this update too, in terms of your analysis, and this kind of goes to something that I recently learned as actually our development director, Emil, was on this panel about the future of Bellevue housing. And what I heard time and time again from both private sector developers like Cushman and Wakefield, as well as the Washington Multifamily Housing Association, is the tremendous regulation costs associated with developing multifamily housing, affordable multifamily housing. So I would love it if, as part of this study, we look at what that 40% is in terms of regulation, and what aspects of those regulations we might have an opportunity to either streamline, eliminate. How do we incentivize further to reduce this 40%? That heard time and time again, to really help bolster more multifamily housing in our city, which is our goal here, to hit these targets. I think that's part of the plan, and part of the strategy is to figure that out. And I think they have some ideas on that, and it would be great. And I'm sure that's part of your strategy, is to work with that development community. But it just seems like there is potentially some low-hanging fruit there that maybe we're going to be able to, again, help streamline the process here. So just want to encourage you to do that. But again, thanks for the great presentation, and look forward to getting updates as we move along. And the next time this comes back will be, was it fall of 2025? Did I see that right on the calendar?
We anticipate April or May briefing.
Okay.
And then we would anticipate requesting council action in November next year.
Action meaning adoption?
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of my colleagues' input. Linda, Hannah, great job. Emil, thank you. Before I start, I want to congratulate Tara Johnson for being our planning director. So congratulations for this amazing milestone. Everything looks great. All of the comments were amazing. I am also very happy that we met our goal of 2017 affordable housing target. It shows that as a city, we are investing in our community. I just have two recommendations. It would be awesome if we can, while we are doing this, we are going to be more innovative to how we to track our progress, and how we are reporting this with a lot of transparency. Can we have an online dashboard that display real time what is the gap, how we are getting there? Can we have some trigger points or mechanism if we need to reassess our goals? Maybe, I don't know, everything becomes golden age and cheap and there is no need for affordable housing, then we reassess maybe, or opposite. How can we see the all of the feedback from our housing development. How can we reduce the cost of affordable housing, the regulation? So if we can track all of those, would be awesome. Also, I agree that the key outcomes of these should be adding affordable housing units, and that's the very important metrics. But I think we can also address a lot of other key outcomes. Like, are we really reducing homelessness by having this? Are we changing housing cost burden? What is the success rates of first-time homeowner, home buyer programs? Are we seeing less rental assistance? Like, we can come up with a lot of complementary outcomes that we can talk about, and not just emphasizing on adding more affordable housing units. That, of course, is a very important key metrics. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Well, I'm going to comment also. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to comment now? Go ahead.
Okay, it'll be quick. Might want to consider creation of a housing commission, especially since we lost a commission. Maybe a housing commission might be something to look at. Just want to throw that idea out there. Thank you.
That's another good retreat topic. So I'm just blown away by the progress we've made. I'm sorry to get stuck on that, because I know we have a lot more need than we've accomplished, but I'm still so excited that in a year of minimal development, we created 116 units of affordable housing and some at pretty deep affordabilities. That is remarkable. I really am excited about this housing, now I forget what it is, housing office or whatever it is. I'm excited about, because in our strategy, we talked about, and it's a strategy we voted on, leveraging the opportunity to put affordable housing like a land trust on surplus property that we own and on our church properties. That is really hard to do. That is way beyond a staff level work. And so being able to have an office of housing where we can bring an expert in who knows how to actually do that kind of development is going to be the difference that enables our city to do this versus just talk about it and hope that some developer comes along and wants to take us up on it. This would help us address all the properties that are available to us. So I'm very excited about moving forward on that. That, to me, has always been kind of the missing link to our strategy. I definitely want to connect our legislative agendas with our affordable housing policies, whether it's state or federal. I am concerned that there could be a push at the state level to put in a multifamily property tax exemption that would supersede our city's one, which is working very well in our city. So I want to make sure that we advocate for the work that we're doing. I also think it's going to be very important to reassess frequently how these strategies are working. I think about what we voted in 2017 and immediately started changing it around. And we did just vote in a new affordable housing goal, which is great, which is what this strategy is going to work toward. And I agree that I think we will surpass it and expect to. But I do want to make sure that we put in a reassessment every year to see how we're doing, how we're reaching our goals, what's working, what's not working. Because new tools may come up that we can use, whether it's tax credits or something, or we may lose some tools. So we need to be nimble with that. Okay, I'm really excited. Thank you for your work. I'm very excited to see where we go with this. We have a motion on the table that has been seconded. All those in favor say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, great, that passes. We have a written report, Intergovernmental Affairs Monthly Update. Excellent reading, thank you very much. I encourage everybody to read it. We will be back here next week on November 19th. We will see you then. Thank you.